Sweet friends, how do you do today? And how do you woo today? And how do you woo you today? Welcome to How to Woo, a podcast on love and making love so we can make sure we're making lives we love. I am your host, Luna Robbie. I am a multi-artist and creative guide obsessed with learning about life, especially from other humans direct, because we all have our own unique perspective and wisdom. So here we are again for some deep listening and a little vicrophilia so we can stay excited about life and co-create a world where taking care of each other is the norm. Let's dive in. Our guest today is a 46-year-old straight but interesting cis-white Canadian male with 15 years of solo poly/relationship anarchy experience who is kind and gentle and very kinky, and I 100% vouch for this because he is one of my number one noodle friends, especially when it comes to feelings. Well, he's my number one feelings noodle friend and has been for like a fucking decade now, right? 10 years, yeah. He loves to talk about communication patterns, personal stories. He is particularly interested in power play, practices and teaches shibari workshops, is very invested in learning and practicing healthy polydynamics, journaling, meditation, and personal development. A slut for new information and new ways of communicating and relating. He also taught me, or did you create the term feelings monster? Did you teach me that? You created it. Which I now frequently identify as specifically a feelings dragon, but this is not about me, this is about him. He is a teacher, artist, entrepreneur, and parent from BC, Canada. Welcome, Michael! Woo!
Hi.
I'm bursting with excitement. And can I reveal that we were just like chatting on the phone like regular, we often
Of
have
course.
early morning talks. Okay. And I was just getting so excited because you really are my number one relationship noodle friend. And you have, our first, our first, our first collaboration was acting related, but I remember early on getting to know you. Like we talked about all things poly. We were pretty early on in both of our explorations. Well, you were more, I guess you were still a few years in and I was in a brand new mess. So welcome. Thank you for being here with me. This is so exciting and a long time coming.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Could you please start off by telling our sweet listeners if you had to rate yourself on a sexual shameometer right now, with 10 being so full of shame and 0 being I don't have any at all right now, where do you fall today?
Okay, so this question I've been thinking about, because in this moment, talking to you right now, I feel 0. But because of like my own history, I grew up Catholic, I inherited like a lot of shame. I am vulnerable to being triggered into like quite significant shame, and sometimes unpredictable. So if we talk long enough and you ask some kind of question, it is totally possible that you and your listeners will get to experience me having shame in real time. And then you'll be able to say, oh, that's what he's like when he's feeling shame. And then we can talk about that. But right now, 0.
I love that. And you are invited but not pressured to share the Shima meter number if and when it changes. So it sounds like, okay, so I often will ask people about their Shamo coasters over the years, but it sounds like yours really is moment to moment in a lot of ways. I mean, I've experienced this with you. And also I've experienced that you are very thoughtful. You are one of the most, I almost put in my like little part of the introduction, I almost be like, shame is one of our favorite topics because we do talk about it a
It
lot. I
kind
don't
of
know if it's
is, yeah.
it's like it's something we return to often because it seems like you have that awareness. Can you describe what it feels like in your body or maybe different ways, like kind of the moments where you notice it? What's the right word here? Come up,
Oh, yeah.
attack, shame attack,
What is
shame crinkle,
Yeah.
squiggle up, wrap its tentacles around you.
Yeah. What does it feel? It feels like hot and dissociative, and like things are at a distance. There's a lot of tightness, and particularly something that I'm really noticing lately, which you and I haven't had a chance to talk about yet, is that I can feel my belly tighten. And it's like, and I think that because the shame and the self-criticism are so linked that I can't actually separate them on the inside. It's like when my belly gets tight, it snaps me into performer mode. And so the way that I often occur, the way that I behave when I'm deep in shame is I'm fine. And
Mm.
if it's deep enough, I believe it.
Whoa.
right? Where I'm like, I'm fine. No, it's like things are fine right now. I'm so fine. It's very, very fine. But what there isn't in that fine, it's so performative. There's no access to tenderness. Like there isn't, access. Like I'm not going to cry about it. In fact, it's not until like a week later where I have the cry that I like so clearly deeply need that I'm going to start feeling like myself again. And so lately I've been really paying attention, to, oh, it's like I can feel that like pulling out of my wise self and into performance mode
Mm.
when I get shame triggered.
Wow. Okay, do you think this new awareness around tight belly shame mode will help you get there faster? Not the fastness is the
Yeah,
key. You helped me learn to not always
yeah,
be
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
fastness, but like, do you think that that's something just as like a signal for you?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's giving me a physical way to check in with myself, and really like my goal is to have a way to have that little cry more often and to
Mm.
build that into my meditation in the morning, or like I often, these days will find the like little cry that I need, either in meditation or when I'm journaling.
Mm. Okay, we will undoubtedly come back to shame, especially sexual shame. But first, I want, I want, I want my sweet friends who are listening to get to know you the way that I know you a little bit. And also, I'm curious to hear how you will answer some of these questions because I want to talk a little bit first about love and connection before we get very erotic. So, could you tell us, please, in general, in life, what makes you go woo? Like, tell us some stuff that you love, how you have fun, and what brings you big joy.
For me, big joy lives in like really connected conversations. There's big joy. It can be
Hmm.
dancing. There can be big joy. There like I can find big joy like being just fully engaged in my body. And I often find that dancing. I will sometimes find that in out in the woods. I live in a beautiful place where I have really easy access to being in the woods, and I'll find that relationally, especially, like not just erotically, but when I'm so deeply engaged in a conversation. So, with one of my partners, I don't know, I'll sit in the kitchen and read to her while she makes food, and just like feel delightful and romantic, or she'll leave me long voice notes, telling stories about her day, and I just think she's so funny, and so those are things that bring me big joy.
I want you to please share details about your dancing. Then I want to talk about details of what is romantic because you brought it up. And then I also want you to share a little bit about your creative parts that bring you joy.
Dancing is the first time that I really experienced being in my body. I was very ashamed of my body as a young person, and I didn't really spend time in it. I was like in my head and finding things to excite me, ideas, and then I found myself at 20 at this retreat, and I was like, oh, five of them dance workshop. Like, what is that? I will go and try that. And then and I so it's like an ecstatic dance practice, one of the ones that's been around forever. And it took me into a genuinely altered state, for the first time, of like fully inhabiting my body. And I was like, I don't know what that was, but I must have more of it. And so I would say that dancing has almost been my primary spiritual practice ever since, where it's the place where I feel so in myself that I feel a connection to other people or to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's, I do different kinds of dance now. I do contact improvisation, which is a style of contemporary dance where you're like in contact with another partner and sort of using them, as support, for vocabulary. But that's not a lead follow dance. Like you're not making people do anything. There aren't moves exactly. And I do blues fusion dance, which is like a mixed style partner dance, where it's like if you're a tango dancer and you want to dance with a salsa dancer, like how are you going to dance together? Well, they call that fusion, and there are sort of fusion scenes, but they're little pockets. Yeah, and I still do ecstatic dance because it's my chance to just go and like dance however I'm feeling. Okay,
I love
the
that.
years ago, I went to New York for the first time, and I was like, okay, I'm in New York, and I'm gonna go to like one of the things that I did was I went to this like massive warehouse party in Brooklyn, and it was like there were like 30,000 people. It was like an airplane hangar. So like it was so massive, I didn't realize there was a second floor until like 5 in the morning. When I was like, what? How could there possibly be more of this? And I was like, okay, like this is New York. Like this is the play. Like people are going to be just like giving her on the dance floor. And one of the things that I was surprised by, but actually was like really comforted or reassured by, is the percentage of people who are dancing full out at this 30,000 person party was identical to the percentage of people that are dancing full out at anything in Vancouver.
Really?
There's just not that many people.
Okay.
Like most people are dancing and they're like in their body and they're feeling it and they're enjoying themselves or jumping up and down. But like the number of people who are like have like really expansive vocabulary and are just like completely letting go and being like, I don't care if I'm weird because this is how I'm feeling and I'm gonna use my body. Very
Mm.
small.
Actually, that
And so I was like,
tracks for
hey, my
me.
people, what's up?
I
Yeah.
love that. I love because like
Yeah.
I mean, at some point you have to learn a certain amount of language. You have to have like physical. I mean, like I'm in much better shape now, which I can tell from fucking. Like I can like fuck as long as I need to, but I will get tired pretty fast dancing for like I have friends that can dance for hours and I can dance for like a few songs and then I want to sit down and be lazy. You know, like I like to like use my physical movement in another way.
Well, then we
Do you,
should do blues fusion dancing. You can dance. It's very mushy.
okay.
It's very sexy.
Do you feel like you had it sounds like your first experience was ecstatic dance and like the five rhythms, I've only done I think like one little thing of it, but it moves you through all these different ways and like kind of encourages that level of freedom, right? Because it's like
Yeah,
without
it's like
that, I think
fluid staccato chaos
yeah.
lyrical.
And like without that, I think the extent of my dance was like at high school dances and then like
Yeah,
weddings, you know, which is
yeah, that's most people. I definitely have had folks. Okay, it wasn't somebody I was super close to, but I vividly remember where she's like, "Wow, you really dance like you're drunk and at a wedding." And it was like, yeah, yeah, I
and
guess
you're
I
like, but I don't
okay.
need the alcohol.
That is the like normal person association for the way that I dance.
Oh,
Which is I
interesting.
mean, well, I think what she was saying is that like I danced in an uninhibited way
Yeah.
that like was unusual for her, but the behind it is yeah, I do want to dance that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And can I share with our sweet listeners that you are a person that like sometimes uses caffeine?
Oh yeah, I'm completely off now.
Oh, completely. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so there's the thing about whatever the half life on caffeine being 6 hours, so like 12 hours later, there's a quarter of it in your body. And I was like, okay, I'm waiting, and I'm gonna get it right. I'm gonna include caffeine. Oh, I was so excited about my coffee, and then I hit the point where I'm like, oh gosh, I'm such a delicate flower, like and sleep is so important for my mental and physical health. I was like, if I stopped drinking coffee entirely, would I sleep better and more deeply? And it turns out yes. So
Mhm.
I still love coffee and kind of miss it,
Yeah,
but I really don't miss the any amount of disruption to my sleep.
that's for sure. Also, I would never think of you as a delicate flower. That does make me laugh, but I do think of you as a sensitive being because you are, I mean, just a
That's
sensory
that's
person.
that's me. With one of my partners early on in the relationship, she noticed that when she called me cute, I would have this like little contraction, and she was like, "What's that about?" And she's kind of a brat, so she just started doing it more and calling me cute and calling me a princess and telling me how little I was, and it was a way of being like gently confronted with some of my own internalized masculinity, like the stuff that was sort of still there, where I was finding it confronting to be called cute, and so
Mm,
I have shifted to where referring to myself as cute and as a delicate flower feels fun, because it's something that even a couple of years ago I would have like had feels about.
yeah. Well, it sounds like you did.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so speaking of internalized masculinity, how do you experience romance? Like, what is your is her calling you cute in this teasing way, does that count as romantic? Like, how do you understand romantic? I think you were talking about it in the context of like reading partner book in kitchen, but like, what is romance to Michael?
With that partner specifically, like she is so awesomely weird. like she doesn't think of herself as romantic, but I tell her how romantic she is. But it's when she like sends me bones, or like wants to talk about death, or is like sharing a poem, and she's like, "Is that romantic?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're letting me in on something that's special to you in a way that makes me feel special." That feels like romance to me.
Mm.
Is the like special sharing, that involves like a shared sense of specialness. That the romance, isn't about, are we doing something that is sort of conventionally romantic? It's, are we doing something that is, sweet and, connective and like purposefully special making together.
Yeah, and that purpose has to do relationally with the other person. But I think romance is relational. I mean, I've been studying it now
Yeah.
for since Valentine's Day of last
Oh,
year, so a little bit over a year now. Like I've been like asking people about it and thoughtful about it and like kind of like
yeah.
joking with friends of like, oh, there's rose petals. Oh, there's a towel animal. It's getting romantic. Oh, I hear jazz music. Oh, I see people on the beach having dinner. That's romantic. But what I'm hearing mostly when I talk to people is there is this like you hit upon it by saying there's a sweetness, but it's like a
Yeah.
sweet. It's like, I mean, bones. What's the context for the bones being romantic?
She just really likes bones,
And
and
so
and
she
so
sent you bones. Like,
she just like, she hasn't actually sent me bones.
oh.
I send her, I'm like, look, I found these bones or this moss or this weird rock, and that she, like, for her that's way more romantic.
Okay, so let's step into your mind. Tell us about your creative parts that bring you big joy. Like, what gets you excited these days?
Okay, so it is, lately I've been enjoying joking that people are like, what do you do? Like, what was this today? And I was like, well, mostly it was just me paying attention to my feelings, and so I think that like the reason that it's fun to joke about is because like I kind of do that. Is like half of what I end up doing.
Yeah.
Like I've got 2 hours of emails. What I really need is like 2 hours for the emails and 2 hours for my feelings about the emails. You know,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and I think that that's what drew me into acting. Specifically, and creativity in general. Is that it was less about, I want to be able to put on that kind of show, and more, I want access to that part of myself,
Mm.
and that sort of has been the in. So like, if I zoom out, like what inspires me creatively, it's kind of anything that gives me an opportunity, to pay attention and kind of get in there into my feels, and be the kind of feelings monster that I want to be.
I love
Yeah,
that.
and I've been doing it long enough that, yeah, of course it's like also satisfying to do a thing that I'm skilled at, that is familiar, that I put. So I still absolutely do love performing, and I'm, doing a couple of like creative performance projects right now, but it's not really the act of being on stage, that is the thing that I'm like, oh, that's what I live for. It's the opportunity to explore this stuff as and call that a job.
Yeah. I was just going to say, what do you think of this noodle of describing our evolution, side by side over the past decade? We both still continue our exploration of feelings and relationships, which is how we met in class together. But now we do it in way more aspects of our life and work.
Yes. Yeah.
Like we're like I can't just do this in rehearsal or wait to get picked on a show or in a thing. Like I am living an entire life where I'm just practicing these skills all the time, and like how do we go deep? Because you like
Yeah.
depth too, is my you like it, and also you're one of the few people that like wants to be as deeply and endlessly curious about human patterns as me. That's why you're my
Yeah. That's why we're
number
such
one.
good noodle friends.
Number
Yeah.
one noodle friend status. Also, just to
Yes.
be clear, number one is not hierarchy. It's not like you're my first noodle friend. That's my second. I have many number one noodle friends, but it just means
Yeah. Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
means
Yeah.
like top noodle will go deep. Will also tell me when noodles are overcooked and need to
Yeah.
get off the pot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I would love to hear, because you are also a person who is someone I admire in this realm. How do you woo you? I think you take overall very good care of yourself, and you've been learning to listen to what you need to nourish yourself.
Mhm.
So like, how do you show yourself love?
Moving slowly, taking a good care of my body. It's about like, right? It's like it's a pretty straightforward system, this delicate flower, right? Like, yeah, it's a delicate flower, but like if I give it what it needs, then like everything's kind of great.
Which is impressive in this modern world where it's kind of difficult to do the basic human things sometimes.
Yes. Oh yeah. No. Like it's like a half-time job.
Yeah.
But even when I'm under a lot of stress, this is something that intellectually I know about myself. Like I can lose sight of it, when there's other things like causing anxiety and taking my attention. But if I take impeccable care of myself, I can function well, kind of no matter what's going on. And but for me, that like taking impeccable care of myself means getting the appropriate amount of sleep, what I eat, and it's about exercise. It's about human connection. And then there's probably like a piece of having an outlet for creativity and expression, which for me sort of most reliably is dance. But I can also find that through like journaling. So there's an
Yeah.
element of not just like being creative, but being in connection with others, with it, that is like important and deeply nourishing.
Mm.
Oh, I also want to circle back to something about romance. Is that okay?
Always.
So I have a buddy who's a physicist. Somebody who one of my like poly success stories, because we dated briefly and then she got into a monogamous relationship with her long-term best friend, and we just like transitioned effortlessly into being very good friends. It was like it doesn't always work out, so it's like
Yeah.
really worth celebrating. Like I
Yeah.
love this person, and we were talking about romance a couple of years ago, and I was like, yeah, I think romance is a combination of extremely like sort of super normally high valuation of and future projection, right? So that
High
the like
valuation
experience
of the person?
of the other person,
Okay.
yeah. So it's like this person is not just like awesome, they are more than normally awesome, and then some amount of like future projection where it's like, and like whether it's articulated or not, it's like, oh, then they're going to keep being awesome forever, or they're gonna be keeping more awesome. And my friend, the physicist, it was like, that's very cynical. And let me share my thoughts about romance. And so in that conversation, I like really found my idea of romance shifted, because she shared that her impression of romance is that romance is a story that you arrive at with another person.
Mm.
And I think that that's her experience, in her relationship, but also she's like, when you meet a couple that's been together for 20 years, like the closest couples, of course they want to tell you how they met, right? They want to like tell you the story, they want to reinvest in the story. Like, what makes it romantic is that the two of you agree on this story of specialness, and then you're like continuing to support that and layer into it. Yeah, and I really like that. So that's different from the sort of like sweetness that makes me say like this activity feels romantic.
Yeah.
This is more about like, okay, like what is a romantic connection versus another kind of connection. So it's maybe like hair splitting for language, but the I think that romance is or can be that like shared story of specialness that you arrive at together, and then like slowly build over time. Now, whether you just like landed it instantly and you're like, yeah, that's the story that works for both of us, or whether you like slowly work your way there, yeah, that feels like a more compassionate and also like a more robust approach to romance, than my kind of like cynical dismissal of it.
I love that. Also, based on your tone of voice, I did not catch the cynicism until you identified it in the story. I was like, yes, they'll keep being special forever. That was probably a human fallacy, but that is how we operate. Good point. So I didn't
Yeah.
even like clock the cynicism.
Yes.
And I think it's an apt frame. And I love the idea, it comes back to the idea of being relational, but it's like our agreed upon special story, and how instructive too. Because as I think about dating people as a unicorn, or even encountering people through work, when I'm like, okay, so how did you meet? There's like a huge difference between the people that like share, the love that's in their connection, and the people that are just like college, and it's like it. And
Yes.
then they're
Yes.
like
Yes.
kind of,
Yes.
and I'll tell you which one that I'm more likely to have a threesome with. because
Yes.
because because if I think too, I've been thinking about romance in all kinds of different ways, but I think sometimes about how it's like relational lubricant. Like it's arousing,
Mhm.
it provides like a nice texture, and it just creates this like yeah, space for smoothness and softness and sweetness. You know, it is sweet, but it is that like it's a co-creation for sure. Are you romantic with yourself? Like, does that exist in your self-love? I'm like, does that exist in mine?
Oh,
Fresh noodle. Am I romantic with myself? I don't think I would count it as that.
it doesn't feel that way to me, but I think that if you're observing it from the outside, it certainly looks like it.
That's true.
I definitely light candles and run myself a hot bath every night.
I was literally just gonna say, because like I do like candles and incense, I do run a hot bath, and if I were to be like, I'm being romantic with myself, like maybe that could be fun.
I'm following pleasure,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm definitely like being gentle with myself. I'm definitely
Yeah.
like focusing on, aesthetic or physical pleasure. Like those are definitely things that I do. I don't know. Maybe for me, romance is relational.
Right. I mean, that's I'm like laughing at my own question because I'm like, how do you woo you? It's like, well, I don't have to woo me because I'm just here with me all the time. But I'm like, maybe I could romance
Well,
myself more.
but yeah, but maybe the question is like, how are you nice to yourself? It's good. I can answer
I
that one.
mean,
No
that's
problem.
the second half is just like, what about self-love? But I think it's just very fun to say, how do you woo you? And I know it should be yourself, but saying you woo you is very funny
Yeah,
to
I know.
me.
It makes you happy.
So maybe
Anything that
that's
makes you
how
that
I'm wooing
happy, we should
myself.
just happen over and over again.
I was gonna
Yes.
say maybe that is me
Yeah.
wooing me by being
Yeah.
you.
Look at that face. Like anything that gives you this much joy definitely should recur.
I love to say silly words out loud. So tell us, how do other people woo you? Like what comes long before love is wooing? Like how do you get interested in someone?
They woo me through communicating like verbally or non-verbally, that what I'm sending their way is like actively engaging for them.
Mm.
I'm a big fan of voice messages, and I have been for a really long time, even pre-pandemic, but then in the pandemic, so much more so because I was like living on a little island. I was very isolated.
Yeah.
And so leaving like personal podcasts of voice messages for people just was a very normal habit, and when I'm first like flirting with somebody, and they're like, oh, I don't know if I'm really into voice messages. And then they're like, oh, I loved that 15-minute voice message. And then like you fast forward a couple of months and are leaving me 15-minute voice messages. I'm like, okay, this is like I'm getting this person is willing to extend themselves into something that's unfamiliar, because I love this. Like I love to not just see text, but like hear the tone of voice and the context and get it imperfectly. And they have to say, well, this actually, okay, I feel like I should delete this, but I'm going to send it to you because I know you love this shit. And I'm just like, yes, I do love this. It's exactly what I love. Thank you. And so that is like one way for me to be wooed, and that is like utterly consistent, sort of across, like in a relationship anarchy way that like is sort of like friend romance or person romance. Like it's totally a way to woo me is like open sharing, and positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, this thing that you said or did, I really liked it, and it felt this way to me. I'm like, ah,
I
yeah.
love that. Also, if I had to answer this question for you, I mean, all of the things you said, yes, that tracks, but I think I would have summed it up by saying, invite him to tea to talk about feelings and desires and what overlap you might have.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Yes. Yeah.
And then maybe be like, I've always been curious about shibari.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or at least that's what I've been planning for myself when I do come visit someday.
Well,
I
and
will.
like erotically, if somebody is willing to be soft, with me, I find that enormously attractive.
I love that.
Right. And so that is like, I don't know if that's wooing, but it definitely is enticing.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Yeah.
wooing to me, seems like active, you know.
Isn't that interesting, right? And this is an interesting question too, because I think in heteronormative society, boys are the ones who do the wooing typically, even if there
Yes.
are
Yeah.
all of the other secret signals that do happen both directions, like, "Oh, I really can't stay," but, like,
Yeah. 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 Nice.
I
That's a
can't,
really good
I
acronym.
couldn't possibly.
Yeah,
Um,
but I'm going to lean forward and smile and do like, yeah.
will you please just grab me so I can't leave?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's something that's been, I mean, a lot of the origin of this podcast is me being like, people are so confusing. Their actions are a little bit opposite from their words, and I'm not sure what's going on here, but why am I getting rejected sexually?
Because he said he couldn't stay, but there was this thing happening with his body, and then he grabbed me, and what is happening, and what is being a human?
Yeah, totally. I also want to admit to you because, going back to the voice memo thing a couple clicks ago and reflecting on my own experience in conversational patterns with you, I have to admit, and I'm just going to admit it publicly, I recently had an experience with a friend who I am becoming closer to. Like, and I was going to show this friend something that was work related, and I was feeling like a little bit private about it, but also very excited to share. But I was like, okay, so before you see this, and I said like 5 different disclaimers, and my friend goes, whatever is about to come out of your mouth is already going to be top tier fantastic because all of these disclaimers leading up to it are so intriguing. Like, I'm intrigued. And I just went bright red and like almost dissolved laughing because I was like, oh my God, like if I were listening in the instances, especially with you, where I have been listening to someone else who's giving all sorts of like details before they give the actual subject, like I get really mad. I'm like, what are you talking about? Just tell me. And so I had this like moment very recently where someone was like, oh my God, you're giving so many details before the actual thing. But I was met with just like, curiosity, compassion, and gentleness. And I know there have been so many times where I've been like, Michael, what are you talking about?
Yeah. I love you. I know this about you, and I want your nervous system to be calm.
I'm like, please answer it in an order where I can have a subject and then attach all the details. And if you do
We
this, I
may
will
have had some
listen.
conversations that involve some very sharp, like, why are you telling me this? Why? Why are you saying this
What
thing?
am I supposed to do with this information right
Oh
now?
God, I don't know. I'm on a long wander through the linguistic wilderness, and I feel like there's a goal, but I don't know actually where that spot is on the map.
But all of that is to say, I too am growing and softening, and I now love receiving voice memos from you. And there was a point in
Mm.
time where I was like, I already have to listen to so many things. Like, what are we doing? Like, I remember that very clearly, not understanding how or why you loved it so much. Like, I don't think that was clear to me before. And so,
Mm.
I just want to out myself there and also
That's cute. Yeah, thank you.
share that with you.
Hey.
Because that was a fresh experience, and I was thinking only of you. I was like, oh my God, I definitely have been rude at Michael for the same thing that I too do as a human.
Ditto, man. I've got an almost 16-year-old, and the things that drive me nuts are so many of them are things he picked up from me.
Oh no, I mean, relatable. Yep. Don't be
Yeah.
like me. I already have to deal
Oh
with this
God,
part.
why do you? Oh wait, I do that all the time. Okay.
Is there anything else to say about what you like to receive from other humans that just make you feel kind of good and melty?
Vulnerable sharing, like effusive, positive reinforcement is definitely like very impactful,
Mm.
on me. And when like I pair well with people who have praise kinks, you
Yeah.
know,
Parallel
right?
with
Because
Praise Kings is good.
because I kind of can't help myself. Like I am very affirming, and if I'm with somebody who like gets all melty and is like, "Oh my God, yay!" Like every time I'm just like, "You're so good,"
Mm.
then like we're gonna be fine. Like then,
Oh, interesting. Wait, so you're answering this receiving question as if they can, if you get to receive them receiving your praise kink, or also if they're praising you? Is it both?
no, more like if they have a praise kink,
Yeah.
because people with praise kinks are just like so affirming about, like basically the way that I behave just by existing
Yeah.
seems to like push the buttons of people with praise kinks. So I get enormous positive reinforcement with like very, very little like personal effort.
I love that. You deserve it.
Yeah.
You definitely deserve
Yeah.
it.
Thank you, thank you.
You're
Okay.
so good at that. Okay.
Um, okay, and then I have a crush on somebody in my community right now. So this also isn't like, it's not wooing and it's not enticing because I think she actually just moves through the world like this.
Mm,
But it's the way that she occurs for me is like she's flirting every time we're having a conversation.
mm.
She's like her body language is really open, and like her voice is such, she makes a lot of eye contact, she bites her lip. It's like, but then I've seen her talk to other people like that. I once heard her ask me like where the bathroom was, and she did it like that. Like I've seen her sing to a group of people, and she did it like that. So I think this is just like how she exists, and it's
Uh-huh.
fascinating to be like, wow, I am being fully manipulated by a set of unconscious behaviors, but I'm still kind of here for it
Here for
because
it.
it is so good for me.
Just to see what happens. Oh, interesting. Ooh, wait, what's the good for you part? Like just because it feels so good and like nourishing?
Yeah, it just
Yeah,
feels really good to be have it pointed at me.
I love that. Do you think is smiling part of that? Because I'm like, this might resonate a little bit. Is me wearing boobs and ass because of my short shorts, like, and then just smiling and friendly? Because is there a difference between friendly and flirting?
Yeah, yeah, it's great. That's great for sure.
Yeah,
Like is you like
intention.
being hot and walking through the world and like smiling at people in like an open, way gonna like trigger people's like flirting association? Yeah, for sure. Of
I
course
mean,
it
I get a
is.
lot of nice treatment in this world for sure.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Right? Like, and okay, man. Like what's great is that like that doesn't seem to bother you. And
I think I do come personally. I know that I can't speak for this woman because part of me is like, well, maybe there's a built-in maybe, like with me, I feel like there's always a little bit of like, although I have now made a promise to myself that I will no longer jump straight into bed with people I just meet on the street. Not that I've ever done it right away, but I don't need to meet street people in bed anymore.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it helps that this person is like actively, interested in being tied up by me. So
Fun.
there
That's
is
so
like
fun. Okay.
some expression of like direct interest.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not. So there's like enough of a thread of maybe in our actual communication. You know, the but and so I said at the beginning that there is like an unhealthy pattern that I'm aware of in terms of my enticement. If somebody is like one of the only things that really triggers what I think of as like anxious or like pursuing behavior in a way that feels very uncomfortable but is very activating is if somebody's like effusively present and then gone.
Oh,
So like,
yeah.
you are amazing. You're
Yeah.
so oh, I love everything you're doing. I'm so here for it. Here's this juicy, vulnerable conversation and connection. Poof.
Yeah.
And then and then a week later, there's like, oh, I'm just really busy, but like you're great. Dude, like nothing gets me into that like anxious seeking space like that. And so like I understand why there's sort of an entire category of dating books aimed at monogamous people that are basically trying to teach them how to do that to somebody on purpose, because it certainly is very effective at capturing my attention.
It's like a slot machine. You don't know when it's gonna hit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Inconsistent reward,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
like most dopaminergic thing you can do to a brain, like very uncomfortable.
Yeah. No, thank you. On the flip side, what sort of connection do you need to feel or enjoy feeling in order to transition a relationship from friendly into like naked friendly sexy?
I don't need a lot of difference there. Like I really like sex. I really like touching. I experience a lot of responsive desire. So, per your suggestion, I am listening to "Come Together." And I read Burnout. I love Burnout. I
Yeah.
read "Come As You Are." It's on my bookshelf. Like I love Emily Nagoski, and I definitely have used the ideas of spontaneous desire and responsive desire. But I don't know if I had the clarity of spontaneous desire is anticipating pleasure and responsive desire is responding to pleasure. Because when people have asked me like, what does that responsive desire mean? I think I've gotten kind of like tangled in the weeds. I haven't been able to like
Hmm.
summarize it for them in a way that made it make sense for them. But yeah, like if I am like snuggling with somebody who I think is attractive, and I have a pretty like broad range of what I think is attractive, and they start kissing my neck, like it's fine. Let's take our clothes off.
And I know that you have certain requirements, like your baselines are high though. Like what do you need in order to feel safe? Because it's really because truly I know that it's not just anything. Like I know that you have a
No, no,
little
that
bit
can't be
more.
just like somebody attractive. I meet it. Well, okay, maybe it's like that has happened before, but
Sometimes we do fuck people we meet on the street, and it's not the same day, but
yeah,
it's a couple days later. Sometimes.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
then we learn
yeah.
from it.
Like, what are those safety indicators for me? Like,
Yeah.
what?
What makes you feel cozy enough to be like, yes, I will get naked with you?
Well, so here's the thing: is this is what place that I think that I am generally like so excited about getting naked with people that I don't always track is, do I have enough connection present that like I feel like my vulnerability is held and allowed here, and so I definitely can get into an experience where I like have what is like a very hot experience, but then I crash afterwards
Mm,
because I'm holding myself so much, in that. And so they like when it's good, it's like this person is genuinely interested, in my messy, vulnerable human bits,
mm,
right? And it's like if I get the impression that somebody is not okay with those things, or is going to be in any way judgmental about those things, or even just kind of like doesn't have the space for those
yeah.
things, you know, if I think they're attractive enough, sometimes I can put myself in a situation where, I make out with that person or have sex with that person anyway, but generally speaking, that feels bad after.
Yeah. I totally get that.
Not because of the experience or anything, but because like my belly tightens and then I get into performance. I'm being kind of performative in that situation.
Which is not usually as hot.
No, exactly. And what am I performing? I'm performing confidence. I'm performing like being the like hot, powerful person who can facilitate an experience. But like a number of times, I've met somebody, who really was excited about power play and could communicate well about that with me. We've decided to have that experience together, and then afterwards, I felt like, oh, there was nothing personal to me in that experience, right? Like this person wanted to have an experience. They chose me to facilitate it for them. Like even if they had a good time and were grateful for it, I wasn't here and present as a person. I'm not being valued for myself. I'm just being valued because I'm providing an experience they wanted to have. I'm just like, okay, they wanted to go on a roller coaster, and I'm the roller
Right.
coaster.
Well, that's like in More Than Two, they talk about treating a human being as a need fulfillment machine,
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so it's like, and I'm noticing the parallel in my life is I have been seeking out and creating containers where I feel that all of me is welcome and or
yeah,
per the agreement that we're creating, like it's like I am only fucking partners at this point who love that I love sexual variety, or who are at
yes,
least comfortable enough with it to really make it worth my while to like engage
yeah,
in and to really
yeah.
like embrace this part of me that scares the shit out of some people. So it's like feeling like I'm welcome here is kind of what I'm projecting onto what you're saying. Like feeling like all of you is welcome and valued.
And is that something that we can either ever like fully know about somebody? Maybe not, but like,
No.
but feeling like I am welcome here, and I definitely can still have contraction, and
Yeah.
I can even have moments that are sticky where I'm like, oh, this part of who I am actually is challenging for this person. We can
Right.
talk through that, like,
Right. Yeah. Well, I think there's a difference between like I'm welcome to be a challenge even. I'm welcome to share in fullness and connect with the other person and like I also am like if I'm in a relationship where there are zero challenges, it's not super conducive to the type of growth that I as a human being value experiencing. Because for me even everything sex related there still is like a challenge a game, in pursuit of all the experience, like, there still are challenges available at every turn, whether they're
I'm having an ongoing conversation with a lover right now. Somebody who has been my lover on and off for 4 years. And one of the things that has been really like special or interesting about that, is that we don't have a lot of conversation in between. Like with this one person specifically, I've been like, well, it keeps feeling really like good and special and alive, and we don't send long voice notes, and it's been
Mm.
really like totally fine for me to check in with her and say, hey, well, like what's going on in life, and just not hear back for a couple of months, and it's like, and it has been fine,
Okay.
and we don't allocate like a ton of focused time together. It's just like when I'm in the city where she is, I reach out sometimes and we spend a few hours together and we play together, and it's like, so it's the closest to just like a clear play partner, that I think I've
Mm.
had, especially consistently. It's
Yeah.
been really yeah, it's been really enjoyable. And then recently, she reached out, and was like, "Hey, I need to have a conversation," and it became clear that like it wasn't working for her,
Mm.
and she didn't quite have the words for it, and what came out initially was, I want more. Like, I want you to focus time on me. I want you to like go, like, I want this sort of like having time and playing together and then going our separate ways. Like that's not what I want. I want more. And it's been a really interesting like navigating ambiguity, to because it took me a while to like sit with, and I was like, and then I sent her a series of questions of like, okay, here's the story I had about our connection previously. That like it was like special and alive, but your life was really full, and so you were content, with like the us seeing each other and then going back to your very full busy life. Like, is that accurate? At what point did you start craving more time together? And is the power dynamic we were playing with, did that constrain you from like noticing that you wanted that or speaking that you wanted that? Like sort of how is that impacting this? And it was challenging for me to find a like compassionate way to communicate, hey, like I really like you, and like if what you want is a boyfriend, that's not what we're doing. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I literally don't know you well enough to just say yes to doing that. Like
Right.
we literally do not know each other,
Yeah. Yeah.
in that way. And so for her to make a bid for connection that was like, let's have a whole weekend together where we just talk about life. I'm like, but we don't do that. Like that would be like going to the person on the street and saying like, want to spend the whole weekend together talking about life? Which like I don't know. Like I know that we have really hot sex together, and
Yeah.
that's really nice. But like, how the hell do you communicate to that to somebody who's feeling tender? So I really had to like shape my questions and find a way to say like, help me understand what you mean, and like let me communicate to you that like, here's what I thought we were doing, and here's what's really great about it for me. And if you want to continue to play with this power dynamic, that gives me a way to think about the differences in our lives and the differences in our personalities that I can play with and is hot. But if what you want is, just like to have like, deep relational connection and let anything sexy sort of emerge organically from that, I don't think that we have enough connection for that to be viable.
Mm. Well, it's also completely different from what you have built together so
Completely different
far.
from what we've been doing. We've been doing this thing that has felt really special to both of us, but
Yeah.
now it's just like not working for her. It's like it's triggering uncertainty, insecurity in a way that, and so she just responded, like day before yesterday, and it's really interesting. Like I'm optimistic about like being able to move towards connection.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
some things that I think that even she wasn't clear on when she came back and responded. She was like, "I'm not asking for escalation. I'm not asking like I don't need our social lives to be integrated. I just here are the insecurities that are coming up for me. And I think that just having chunks of focused time, where I can settle and not feel like I need to prove myself
Mm.
is going to help me. And so if you want that, then let's talk about it. And if not, then maybe this isn't the right thing right now. And so
Mm.
we're we've sort of navigated through the like fraught part of it,
Yeah.
and are now in a place of like, she's got a clear ask, like we may try that, and it like may or may not feel good, and I don't think anybody's going to like feel terrible about it either
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a really collaborative connection,
Yeah.
and that there's thoughtfulness happening on both sides. And it's, I mean, I can relate to that. I definitely have had experience with a partner where I'm like, what we do together is so hot. It's so clearly boundaried. And I have these parts where I'm like, uh, compared to how other people value me, like, not to be comparative, but to be a little comparative because I see how much other people
Mhm.
value me. Like, do you want to value me, or am I just showing up? Like, am I a need fulfilling machine? Like, what, and so,
Yes.
and it's not even until I have that feeling that I can figure out how to ask for that, or if
Yeah.
something comes up, like, for me, poorly communicated schedule snafus will, like, send me into destroyer mode because I'm just like, I can be flexible in practical ways. And if I am surprised and there's an element of stupid to the communication, then I get really, really crinkly, and especially because there's so much in my life that's moving parts and pieces that, like, when I make time for someone, it's a big deal. Not to be like,
Yeah.
I'm so fancy, but like a little bit. Like, my time is it's Jenga. We all have our, like, Jenga towers that we have to build. So, okay, so that's unfolding. I love that. I mean, it sounds like also you're able to stay calm enough in your experience to communicate clearly to figure out how to move forward together.
Thankfully, in that connection, there has been spaciousness. Like it has been okay to communicate. I have received this. Thank you so much for sending it. Like I need time to think about how to respond properly. And that's thankfully that's been okay on both sides.
Yeah, and also the fact that you're able to, like, articulate, or it sounds like you sent that as a literal communication instead of just, like,
Yes.
silently ghosting for a number of days, or, unknown amounts of time, or,
Yes.
it's like
Yes.
letting the person know.
I am trying to do better at that. Like I definitely like I think that that's one of my relational challenges, is that, in overwhelm, I can sometimes get into patterns of like dissociation or avoidance,
Yeah.
and I'm just like continuing to remind myself and to process and to internalize like how bad it can feel to like feel dropped, and that, like in practical terms, like sending a single sentence of like I am overwhelmed, and have received this and we'll talk to you on Thursday,
Yeah.
like that can sometimes be enough, to like forestall a like pretty substantial loss of connection.
Doomsday. Yeah. I was going to say, for me, the difference between receiving that is huge. And it is also funny. I mean, I think in friendship we have a little more leeway, but also I know that it's like I have the opposite pattern, right? Like, I turn into, like, an anxiety woodpecker when I don't have all the information, and I try to figure out what's happening. And, for the avoidant people who are on the other end of that, it's not, and then I have my own flip, but, like, I'm learning to similarly be like, I'm noticing I'm activated and I want to ask you 1,000 million questions. So perhaps we should take a pause for a couple of hours.
Look
um,
at us
I
getting
mean,
better with our
not
patterns.
always, sometimes, but yes, I'm,
No,
I'm
me
getting
neither,
better and
man.
better.
Like my good friend here, they sent me a series of turtle emojis just on
Great.
on Monday.
That's great.
Because we have established before that like if I'm very overwhelmed, I could just send a turtle emoji instead of responding, but I had not responded to one of her messages, and so she sent me turtle question mark, and then like I didn't respond to that either, and then she just made like turtle cucumber, like turtle teapot. Yeah. So she was being very cute about it, but she was just basically like, I know you're in
Hello.
distress,
Yeah.
and that's why you're not responding to me. What do you need? And but it was all like very cute. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I would love to hear your health and safety practices. How do you communicate with new partners? Like, what do you need to play safely with people? You are in an actively open lifestyle. So what is that like for you?
My agreement with the partner who I've been seeing the longest, is that we see a fresh test, from any new partner, or we have like 2 weeks and change kind of between when we play with the new partner, so that we can get a fresh test,
Yeah.
right? So it's like that's sort of how we're navigating, the uncertainty and discomfort right now, and sort of balancing that and autonomy, and so because I worked that out, with this partner I've been seeing the longest, that's sort of what I have communicated to or offered to each of my other partners in the last couple of years. And that has been, it's not without its challenges, but I think that's how we've been navigating. Like, you have to trust people at some point, and also, like, full autonomy is fun. Like, I want, my partners to be able to, like, meet somebody on the street and decide that they want to have sex with them, and that's fine. Right? I just don't want them to tell me after they've had sex with me, hey, I had sex with this person I met on the street on Thursday.
Yeah.
I wonder about all the track marks on his arms. Right? Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to hear about that after I've exposed myself, to a risk. Beforehand, I want to be like, cool, man, that's great. You decided to shoot heroin with a stranger. If that's what you did, that is a thing that you can do. Let's wait a couple of weeks and and then have you get tested several times, and then we can go back to doing all the sexy things together.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And I use that, like, sort of sharing a needle with a stranger, because I think that it lands for people in a different way than, like, having oral sex.
Yeah.
But functionally it's not actually different.
Pretty
In terms
similar.
of risk exposure, it's not actually different, but it feels different.
Oh
So
yeah.
using the, like, needle sharing, has been, like, a fun way to, like, joke about this thing, where I'm like, I want you to be able to do that, because, like, any of the people I've dated in the last couple of years have no interest in sharing a needle with a stranger. And so it's, like, an easier thing to, like, talk about. But, like, if you are putting somebody's bits in your mouth, then it's like, I want you to have seen a fresh test from that person, or I want there to be 2 weeks, minimum, and then a fresh test before you want, to put my bits in your mouth, so that I can, sort of, like, that's not a perfect way, like, some things definitely do take longer than 2 weeks, like,
Yeah.
like, that's, but that's how we work out the balance of safety and autonomy right now.
Also, you have one of the hottest things, which is to me, which is a vasectomy.
Yes. I'm definitely taking, one risk, which is, the risk of unwanted pregnancy, completely off the table for myself and my partners with ovaries.
Yes.
And to me, that is extraordinarily hot.
I love that. It makes cum play so much more safe, fun. I mean, I guess if you like the thrill of the risk, I don't know, that's part of it, but
I have had multiple partners now, who were like, it's only really hot for me if there's the risk. Like, yeah, okay. I had two
Really?
partners. Yeah, one of whom was like, we after we had sex the first time, communicated that, she was like, I didn't realize it, but because there's no chance of making a baby, I'm just not into it. And then I
Whoa.
had a different partner, like, a year and change previous, who, like, shared with me that, like, this is the hottest transgressive thing, and, that she always thinks about it when she's having sex with a man, that, like, maybe there will be pregnancy, and with that not on the table, like, with that not present, like, she couldn't get turned on the same way. So that is a thing that happens for
Whoa.
people.
I didn't know. This is my first time hearing about that. And also, I'm now wondering if I have a streak of, I mean, I think vasectomies are hot, but I'm like, I think I also identify with, like, as I said, I was like, wait, I think I get that thrill sometimes. I mean, I definitely have had
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
responses to
Well,
risky
but that's
situations.
you are have a very broad profile of, like, enjoying transgressive things, so that doesn't surprise me in
Well,
the slightest.
I mean, to go back to Emily Nagoski, I'm like, yes, responsive desire. I love anticipating everything. That's why having a date on the calendar is so exciting because I can anticipate it. And then I'm like, yes, I have responsive desire. If you are touching me or telling me about something you want or just telling me a story, I'm also a vicarophile, however you want to say it. Like I experience vicarious turn
Mhm.
on through listening to other stories, and I mean general life turn on. Like I am aroused, but I also don't always think of this podcast as, I mean, I don't usually think of this podcast as erotica, but I know many listeners do experience it that way. I don't think we've gotten anything super juicy yet. I mean, well, I don't know. It's all juicy to me. But
Monsters.
but dang. Well, okay. Since having a vasectomy, do you feel any difference in your own arousal or turn on?
No, no, there's zero difference. Like, I
Okay.
mean, I cannot overstate, like, how insanely straightforward a vasectomy procedure is. Like the whole thing takes less than 5 minutes. The guy chatted to me the entire time. I wore a cold pack in my shorts for 2 days. And it's done. Like it is, the incision is like 3 millimeters long. Anybody who's hand wringing about vasectomies is hand wringing about like what they mean to that person.
Mm.
You know, like in terms of like the actual impact on a physical body, like the vas deferens is like right there on the outside. Like all lady parts are like they're hidden inside there. Like the guy, this tube we're talking about is like right there. They're like slice, burn, like glue you up. You're out the door. Like they had like 10 rooms, and the guy would just like go in, do the, hey, please, you go to the next one. They just do them on rotation. Like these vasectomy doctors are just like minting money.
Wow. Okay. Ooh, I mean, that's a different kind of hot. And now because I have so many fantasies about lining stuff up. I'm like, oh, I don't know, I don't know. And there's like the part where you get it, and then what is it, 6 to 8 weeks? Like 8 weeks later, you get to go and like have the room where they're all lined up, and you get the healing or the benefit. I don't know. I'm in Fantasyland. Okay. Um, congratulations, this is your prize for getting a
Yeah,
vasectomy, and
first you
I'm
in the
just like,
lab coat, and then you getting the gangbang while still wearing the lab coat. Yeah, yeah, that's hot. Okay, I totally would watch that.
I mean, it's where my brain goes. Okay, so that's great, great. Okay, so any other health and safety things, emotions, you talk about partners at what point, like what do you share before you?
I mean, I'm full transparency. Is really my jam.
Yeah,
I just after 15 years of exploring poly in different ways, and like coming to terms with it, and the right. I wouldn't say like I've got it all figured out. But the thing that works best for me is total transparency.
mm,
So I don't want to play with a new partner without talking about my existing partners, without, having a conversation about health and safety, like those things are hot, and important for me, because then I'm not thinking about it. Like otherwise I could get swept into a hot experience and then like suddenly partway through be like, wait, we didn't talk about, some part of this, and so like when is this going to like, is this too risky? Is this going to be an explosion? Like, I don't want to suddenly be caught off guard, by that worry.
yeah,
And if there's like good communication about feelings, then I feel like there's more, then the possibility for aftercare is better as well.
yeah,
It's like something that is an active worry for me with new partners, because I've had several experiences in the past couple of years, that were destabilizing. Is, can this person communicate in real time what they do and do not want?
yeah,
Right? Like it's, as a male-bodied person, in a patriarchal society, I think it is like it's important for me to pay attention to the fact, that like most of the people who I'm having sex with, because I just have sex with like female identified folks generally, are carrying trauma of some kind, most of them, and that compliance, is a like legitimate trauma response, right?
hmm,
So trauma, like very unpredictable. It's like, oh, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, and then suddenly it's not fine out of nowhere, and that one of the ways that that can manifest, is as a fawn response, where somebody's like, not just like I'm going along with this, but like, yes, I want this,
yeah,
but it is so destabilizing to have somebody then the next day or the next week, or the next month say, I know I said I wanted that, but I did not.
yeah.
That was me feeling very, very bad. And you did not notice that I was feeling very, very bad. And it's like, oh my God, that like on several layers, that is one of the most destabilizing things for me. It's like, I don't want to have a hot experience that is only hot for me.
Yeah.
I don't want to like cause harm to another person, and also like being surprised by that information afterwards, is like really throws me.
Oh
Like
yeah,
that triggers shame, or can like trigger shame. And then if I'm in shame, attending to another person who is tender is very challenging,
yeah.
and right. And so it's like, and that also is like a thing that sort of needs attention in a patriarchal society, where it's like, oh, I'm having so many feelings about being confronted that I need you to not be in your thing and take care of me. It's like, I don't want to give that to my partner either.
Right, right.
So for me, like a safety indicator currently, is Can somebody say, pause for a second. Oh yeah, no, that doesn't feel good. I like it like this instead.
Yeah.
And sometimes like that just sort of emerges naturally, with the partner, but in case it's not going to, or if I'm like front loading, what I'll say is like, okay, do you have safe words you like? Okay, yeah, and sometimes people are like, yes, I do, but most of the time people are like, huh? Or they're like, well, I don't know, whatever, and so I'm like, okay, here's the thing that I really like. What I really like is like, it really helps me feel safe if I know that even when you're in intense sensation, you can tell me when it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so something that I think is really hot, but also makes me feel really safe and comfortable, is, we have like a full stop word, but we also have a like pause, check in, or that's, a little too much word, which, and I like mercy because I think that that is still like inside a power dynamic is hot.
Same.
Exactly, right? It's hot when somebody says mercy. I mean, if somebody says pause or stop or whoa, check it, sure, of course. But like, does that sort of pop out of the power dynamic? Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, and for safety reasons, dude, pop out anytime you want.
Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
want me to keep feeling this like hot, sexy way that we both like, and be able to communicate, hey, here's a way you could do that that is hot for me.
Yeah.
And so then I'll be like, on purpose, like the first time I do something, that has like a little bit of intensity, like spanking is usually my go-to for this one. I will just very slowly escalate on purpose until they say mercy, and I'll
Mm.
communicate that beforehand. So the first time I do this thing, I'm going to start very, very gentle, and then I'm going to slowly escalate until I hear you say mercy, and then I'm going to stop. I'm going to celebrate the fact that you used your word. I'm going to celebrate the fact that you can and that you want. Like every time you're like, whoa, hey, pause, let's stop. I'm going to really celebrate you, and that for me is part of like, I think that that leads to the kind of sexy experience I want to have. But I also think
Yes.
that's me being a good feminist. Is like, I'm going to celebrate the no, because the fear usually is, I'm going to say no and something bad is going to happen. And so I'm going to
Mm.
do the opposite on purpose because that costs me nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's so easy to just be like, fuck yeah, great. Thank you so much for this no. I'm so like proud of you. I'm so glad that you can do this. This makes me feel so safe and good. You are awesome for your no.
Yes.
And then does that make space for people generally to like find the thing that is hot for them and relax into it? Yeah, usually.
I fucking love that. And I'm so glad that you kind of like naturally segued toward. I'm a big, huge fan of the conversations that you have had over the years with partners. Like, you are one of the people who I use as a touchstone for just like getting clear
Oh,
on sexy desires ahead of time. And what's your current method? Like, I know that there definitely were eras of like
the
lists and
spreadsheet.
yeah,
Yes,
like,
yeah, 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 yeah. I've done the spreadsheet. I don't do the spreadsheet currently.
okay.
Like I have a lover who was like, "You used to do a spreadsheet? I want the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Send me the spreadsheet." And so I sent her the spreadsheet, but like she hasn't filled it out yet
That's a
because
big
we're
spreadsheet.
already having sex and it's fine. But she really wanted the spreadsheet, and then she was very excited about looking at it. I don't use the spreadsheet currently because I think what I most want or wanted in the spreadsheet, is like, what are the hard no's? Like what are the things that you never want me to do? And what are the things that like you absolutely like need or crave or want? It's like those are the most important things for me to know.
Yeah.
And then everything else is like, we can like talk about it in a sexy situation or not in a sexy situation. Is fine for that to emerge, right? Because like
Mm.
there's so many curiouses, there's so many try me's that if
Yeah.
I send a spreadsheet that's got like 200 curiouses, I'm not
Yeah.
even going to remember them all.
Oh, yeah, I
I'm
know.
like, you're like and so what I end up looking for on the spreadsheet is like, what are the hard no's? Okay, great. You never want to be pinched. Like you always want your nipples to be like very, very gently touched because they're so sensitive. You don't want me to like play with your ass. Okay, like those are your great. Fun, awesome. I'm so happy to know this rather than to like accidentally run into it in a situation where you're going to be worried about my feelings, for telling me no in real time. Like,
Right.
I don't want either of us to have that experience.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then for most people, like, it's actually unusual for my partners to be able to articulate beforehand,
Mhm.
here are the things I must have. Like
Yeah.
they're like, oh, like no matter what, I really need this. In the context of like meeting people through a dating app, like sometimes that will be like the context for connection. Like somebody
Okay. Yeah.
will match with me because they want power play or because they want to be tied up or so it's like so the sort of need to haves are kind of led with a little bit more in that environment in a way that I find helpful. But I think for most people, like identifying the need to haves, is trickier. So that's like a very long-winded way of answering like how do I have this conversation right now. I talk about safe words, and stop words. I talk a little bit about aftercare. I definitely will like ask some version of like what do you like, unless the person's sort of vibe is like really sort of responsive and nonverbal, in which case I'll just explore.
Mm.
And if it's somebody who I don't have like a sort of robust human connection with, then I will say, sort of like, what are your hard no's? What are the things you want? But the way that I love asking the what do you want question is how do you want to feel? Because I'm not really as interested in what do you want to do, right?
Okay.
Like what do you want to do feels like mechanical to me,
Mm.
right? I would like your cock in this spot, and I would like. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, cool, man. It's like you can want that, but like that story is not hot to me, and it doesn't fill me with like playfulness and power and curiosity, the way that I want. It feels like now I'm a needs meeting machine,
Right.
and I don't want that experience for either of us. The person who I have a crush on who behaves in this like ridiculous flirting with the world way, when she reached out, I reached out to her and was like, "Hey, do you want to be tied up next week?" Which, like, for me was very bold because, like, I don't know this person very well, and I had no
Mm.
idea if that was going to be received. And weirdly, like, she got immediately back to me, like, "Great, yeah, I'm free every evening next week. Like, when works for you?" Oh, okay, great. And so and so again, I don't know this person very well, so we've had this conversation by text where she's like, "What should I expect? What should I wear?" And so I was like, well, the first time expect as much talking as tying. And that's when I included the like, how do you want to feel? Like, give me some feeling words. And she said, I want surrender. I was like, great, cool, man. Like, we can definitely collaborate on that. Would you be willing to give me some other feeling words? And then for context, I was like, I want to feel powerful and playful and curious and sensual. And then she responded like in a way that was much clearer, where I was like, oh, that's the kind of surrender you want to feel. Like surrender can be full passivity. It can also be like highly erotic. Like I have no fucking idea what
Yeah.
experience this person wants to have, until asking for, those detailed feeling words. But that to me feels creative and feels curious, where I'm like, okay, what is going to help this person feel this flavor of surrendered? That that's something that we can investigate both in conversation and physically.
When asking a person like what they need, it really is you're finding effectiveness through feeling words. I feel like I would not give a good answer unless, and quote unquote good answer, unless I was cued with the types of emotions. And even then I would struggle because I think as I'm hearing you talk, I'm like, I need to feel like we can authentically explore in the moment per the comfort of our boundaries. And so then I do want to get hung up on activities. Like I really am clocking this part of my brain as you talk, which is so
Right. Well, I mean, the
interesting.
context is like the like if you've had the hard nose and the like really juicy yeses
Yeah.
conversation already, then the conversation is like it's not like in general always. It's with this
With this
person
person.
today
Okay, okay, okay.
in this moment. How do you want to feel? And that conversation is like it changes every single time. Like it's always, even though I asked her by text, I'm still going to ask her if she comes over to the house to be tied up
Yeah.
because it might be different that day.
Well, and your juicy yeses, I imagine, change partner to partner. Mine do.
Totally. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. It's like, it's not a question that exists in a vacuum. It's not
Mm.
like how do I want to feel always. It's like how do I want to feel with this person?
You kind of gave us a hint, but what is sexy to you?
Anything that carries the even the like faintest whiff of like anticipating or responding to pleasure, I can refer to as sexy. So something that is like explicitly sexual, somebody's who's like, here is a hot picture of me. Yeah, great. It's like clearly unambiguously sexy. Somebody's like, this is my body and I know you like to touch it. Yes, very sexy. Somebody who's like, I'm thinking about you and just here in my bed. It's like, okay, good. Also like very explicitly sexy. Yeah, but even a hint of that, like I got a voice message from somebody who's like maybe flirting with me. It's unclear. Like I'm living in a small community right now, so I'm moving very carefully.
Mm.
I don't want to be like greedy slut that I want to be, because I'm in a small town and I'm going to say the same people at like literally everything forever. So I'm like, cool, man. I've just been like slowly, getting to know this person, who like I think it's pretty clear that like she wants to flirt with me, but also maybe has some ambiguous feels about it. And so it's like it's a fun, like very thin thread of maybe. And she left me a voice message the other day, and at the end of it, she was like, sending a hug and anyway, good night. like we haven't gone into like anything yet, but it was enough that like the next day I drafted a message, that said like that was a very provocative pause. Like, what did late night you
Not to
had
say.
the impulse to send me besides a hug? But then I sat with the message and I was like, oh, I'm not quite ready to like that was a really great opening and I
Mm,
experienced that as sexy.
mm,
You know, but I'm not quite ready, to like take this like very clear, like handed to me on a silver platter,
uh-huh.
like provocative flirt opening yet.
Yeah. That makes sense. Oh, ooh. Well, and then I don't know, am I projecting this? Also kind of like the anticipation of that is sexy. Like the being patient enough, the
Yeah.
having awareness of community, which is lacking in a lot of places, especially larger cities these days, like having that thought, the tension that it's drawn out because of the carefulness. I love that.
Yeah, and for me, like the I definitely sort of share with you like a delight in variety, and like like sexual variety, and it's definitely something that I can sometimes have trouble expressing to
Mm,
partners, as I
mm,
have my own like in shame or my own story about like what does it mean to be a man who wants to have sex with lots of people.
okay.
But it means that like being in a place where there's even just like some little threads of maybe floating around, even if we never do anything about them, that I find very energizing.
Oh, I totally get that. I'm like, I don't have to see everything through, particularly if it's not a top-notch circumstance, but just feeling the threads of possibility, I think, is very
Yes.
enlivening. I don't think I knew that it was difficult for you to express that. Why? Or do you want to practice? Or do you want to hear how I tell people? Because I don't struggle with that. I'm like, this is me.
I think it's because I have judgment, of men who sort of unambiguously pursue sex with everyone around them, right? And
Okay.
so I think that some of it is that it's like,
Mm.
if I embrace this part of myself, do I become that thing that I actually am like quite critical of, in the world,
Mm.
right?
Ah.
Like like where's the gray there? Also my experience in my 20s, of people who are poly, and one of the reasons that it took me so long to even like try on the identity label, is that all of the people who were in my circle, who were really actively talking about poly and communicating about poly, were dudes, and they were narcissists, and they just wanted to fuck everyone.
Oh.
Right, like so all of the like the people who are like the loud poly people were the ones who they're not what I think of as poly.
Okay.
They just were like, I would like to have sex with you and everyone and take zero care for anybody's feelings about it.
Right.
And they're like lifting the language and they're telling people, oh, feelings are our own responsibility, which means I don't have to take any responsibility for yours and I can go fuck everybody.
Mm.
And those people absolutely like poisoned the well in my community. Like I lived in Vancouver for a very long time, and I think that not just there, but like certain in any of the communities I've been in, there's a certain immediate response. When people hear about poly, for a lot of people, because they've had an experience or a friend has had an experience with somebody who is just a narcissist who wanted to fuck everybody, who
Yeah.
had like co-opted the language, and behaved badly, and they're like, oh, that's what poly is. And I think I was there too at the beginning. I was like, oh, whatever that is, I'm not that.
Yeah. Okay. I hear that.
And so does that get in the way of sometimes, of me being like, well, I am very robustly attracted to like a wide variety of people,
Yeah.
and if the conditions were right, would I want to have sex with lots of them? Yeah, totally.
Absolutely, if the conditions were right. I mean, I feel that way too, and I get confused sometimes or whenever someone says novelty seeker with a tone of voice that means they do not think that's a very like human or
Yeah,
interpersonal way. I'm like, "Well, for me, I value novelty and I'm bringing myself to the experience. Like I am not like, oh, I'm high and mighty conscious, but also like I am pursuing novelty because I learn about myself from each new partner. I get to experience different sides of myself and learn different things from each completely different human. And to me, I'm like, it's totally fine if you only want to have one type of experience with one person at a time, or at least that's what you say, for X number of decades. That's a totally fine experience if you only want to pay attention to one. I just want to pay attention to and experience more types of people, and it's up to my partners like how fully do they want to show up and share themselves with me, right? And so it's like for me it's like diving into that experience of more and more people is not about just like more, how can I have more? It's just like what
yeah,
can I learn about myself from someone who's this texture versus that texture, because I experience the energy of each person. It's so wildly unique and different. And so I think for me it's always been a little bit struggling to kind of like wrap my brain around the like heavy jealousy and competition narratives that I'm like, how could we be in competition? There's nobody else like me. There's nobody else like you. What are you talking about? And
mhm.
that's a thing that I still kind of struggle with. Do you experience jealousy? I can't even remember right now.
I don't experience jealousy in a way that I hear many other people talk about, but like I definitely will sometimes experience contraction, around my partners like speaking about their other partners. Like that does occasionally happen for me. But
Mm,
one of the first books I read about poly was The Ethical Slut, and I found their frame for that just deeply reflective of my own experience, and so it's sort of always informed my opinion of that. And they say that jealousy is the mask your insecurity likes to wear. So
mm,
but I do experience insecurity sometimes, but I don't experience, like how could you? Which I think is what people mean when they experience jealousy, when they're like, oh, like you went and did this hot thing with someone else, that like how could you take that away from me by doing that thing? Or like whereas I do sometimes experience like, oh wow, that person does sound really awesome. Oh.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right. So like, is that jealousy? I don't think so, at least not the way most people speak about jealousy. Like I would call that insecurity.
Mm,
And one of the things that I really witness in myself is that it does not show up with every partner, right? Some partners communicate with me in ways that make me feel so special that I want to them to go and experience special things with other people. And I'm just like, great. Oh my God, tell me about how huge his cock is. That's awesome. You know, like that's like not fussed at all because I feel like so robustly special because of the way this person like behaves with me and communicates with me. And they're doing that positive reinforcement with me consistently enough that like whether they're doing that verbally or they're just doing that by being all melty when they're around me. So I'm like, oh
yeah.
wow, I am clearly feel special to this person, and so of course I want them to go have awesome experiences with other people and that are wildly different than mine. Yeah, and then yes, like every once in a while some new partner of my partner will happen to have a quality that is unfortunately exactly the thing I'm personally insecure about, but like the opposite. It's like this thing that I'm worried that I'm deficient in. Oh, that's great. Yeah, they have tons of that thing, eh? Just mass quantities of that. Wow, that sounds wonderful for you. Like, Do you still love me? Oh God. You're like, yeah, like that happens in small ways,
Yeah.
sometimes, but I have discovered that I have a very specific workaround, for that again, when I first, came up with this, I was like, oh, this is a thing for all people. And it was like, haha, no, this, nope, no, nope, do not impose this on other partners. This is not reassuring for other people always, but it is very reassuring for me, where when I feel that start to happen, one of the ways to make it go away is to be like, can you show me pictures of this person, please?
Definitely does
You know,
not work for everyone, but yeah. Yeah. But what does it do for you?
it reminds me that that other person is still a person,
Yeah.
and that they're not some kind of like fear fantasy super me with like all the
Mhm.
things that I like about myself but more, and all the things that I'm insecure about. They don't have those,
Yeah.
but like it's like, oh, this person is just a person, and they're like, yeah, they're very cute, but they don't look like me because they're not me, and I can see in a like a visceral felt way that they are not me, and that reassures me a little bit.
Mm, yeah. I would love for you to share with us to whatever depth feels appropriate. I know we could talk for hours. Like, I want to hear how you learned about sex, relationship, and connection. I know some pieces. I know a lot of pieces, but I would love to hear just
Yes.
like a cohesive story of it. And starting, when do you first remember hearing about sex? What do you remember feeling about it? And how did your unfoldings go?
I think I referenced this, when we were talking about shame, briefly, is that, I was raised Catholic by a single mom who I was like very connected with, and so I inherited like a lot of familial and cultural shame, like explicit familiar and cultural shame around sex, in addition to the sort of like strange, shamey messages that are just sort of implicit everywhere. And so I don't remember the first time I heard about sex, but I think that I like reflexively avoided like hearing about it. I'm not sure I knew anything about how sex happened or worked. My first like really clear memory in this field is my mom coming into my room at like 14 or 15, and I was like feeling so horribly uncomfortable that I didn't know what was wrong with her, and staring at the floor and saying something like, I got you this book if you ever wanted it, it's on the bookshelf. And like it was some book about sex, and I didn't read it. Like it was, I got the message that it was like so horribly shameful, that it should never be spoken of and it should never be looked at. Like my friends would tease me, by sort of like trying to like show me things, but like I was not having it.
Mm.
So in high school, I like reflexively avoided information even. Right. At some point I must have learned like how sex happened, but I both had like a lot of like desire, for eroticism and closeness, and like a deeply felt sense of shame about that. And then I got lucky in college. I developed a huge crush on the like punk rock girl who had the locker below mine, and she was like 5 or 6 years older than me and was taking the creative writing program, and I just thought she was so cool. And so at one point we had like opera tickets that we could like get cheap through our theater history class, and I asked her if she would go with me or if she wanted to go with me, and she was like, "Yeah, great, yeah, come over to my house. I have to get changed." And so I was like, okay. And I went to her house and she was like, fancy or slutty? And I was like, what, just whatever you want is fine. Right. And so like this was my first ever lover.
Mm.
And I just got such an incredible education, that like more than I had any ability to appreciate at the time.
Wow.
Right? She mostly dated women. She was actively polyamorous. She was like kinky as fuck. She was into all sorts of crazy things. And she was like genuinely interested in me and engaged in me, and was like, I think thought it was kind of hot to like deflower, the like, quirky, sensitive, like weird boy from the Fraser Valley. So we had lots of like good conversation, but also like I didn't have sex without a condom for like until like 7 years later or something. So
Oh,
like, no,
wow.
this is just what you do always,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I remember having a conversation with somebody, at like 20, where like it was a bunch of my 20, or like thereabouts, lady friends, and they were having some sex conversation. I was like, what? Like, no, making somebody come is really fairly straightforward. Like, what do you mean? I don't understand this experience you're having, because my experience with this first lover had been that like she just told me what worked for her, and then I did that, and it was fine.
Yeah.
And so for years after that, like after we split up, I would have the experience of dating somebody, but then after we started having sex, they were like, I love you. I think because they just had never had, like, and it's just sort of sad about like sex and the world, that they just never had a good lover before, and
Yeah.
so, and I was like, huh, what? I mean, I like you. The sex is nice, but at the time I was like, that my 20s, were like a very confusing time where I both had this like very robust education, and of like extreme sex positivity, right?
Yeah.
Like like this lover took me to a queer cabaret that her friends were doing, that was like, I don't know what you had to do to find out about this thing, but it was in this nightclub, and it was on a night that it wasn't open, and somebody was fucking somebody else with a beer bottle on the stage, and there was like a hot girl with a goatee at the next table, and this is like 1999 or something. I'd never seen a woman with a goatee, much less a very hot one. It was right, like, so it's like I got a very robust education, like right at the beginning.
I love that so much, and I think that's new information for me. Did you struggle with the transition from like, no, I don't really want to talk about it or hear it? Like how did she get you from like, oh, no, I don't engage with that, to like you had sex with your first lover? Like what was that
Oh
like for
yeah, yeah.
you?
Well, by then I'd been in theater school, and in theater
Okay.
school, like I think my impression of theater school, and like this is held out with other folks who were in theater school, that either you all have sex and everybody ends up hating each other, or you're like very sexually frustrated. And we were in the second category, so there was a lot of back rubs and a lot of obsessive talking about sex at that point. And I'm
Okay.
like, so I wasn't like actively contributing very much to those conversations, but like I was picking up at least like some information, because I was there in the field with like a bunch of horny people who had just finished high school and were on their own for the first time, but also had a reason to not all have sex with each other, because it was a 2-year program I was in, and the folks in the year before us, they fucking hated each other. They'd all like had sex in different combinations, and they were miserable and hated
Okay.
each other.
Oh, that's
And so it was
so
like
interesting.
we had like disincentive to do that for the first like long chunk of time we were there.
Wow. Oh my
But
gosh.
yeah, the
Okay.
transition, like in my 20s, I was really a mess in dating,
Yeah.
because I think I flip flopped wildly between total open sex positivity and like deep shame. And the right, like it's not like I got over my shame with that first lover. It's
Right.
that like I added like an incredible foundation of ease and sex positivity, to like a deep sense of shame that I didn't even really understand or know was there. And then for the next decade, I ended up trying to do both at the same time. So I must have just been like a chaotic, confusing mess to my partners, because at that time I couldn't say, I'd really like to have sex with you, but like I don't think we're terribly compatible as people.
Right.
Like I was not able to say that. And so I would get into relationships that were mostly about like me and some other person like wanted to have sex with each other.
Mm.
And then and then I would be like confused and conflicted, and like so I was not communicating well, because of my own shame, and like what it would have meant to me at the time to say to somebody, I like you. I don't want to like, I don't have the impulse to like know you deeply in a romantic way, but like, I would love to have sex with you if you want to do that.
Mm.
But
What?
I still have trouble saying that to somebody out
Yeah.
loud.
Well, and I would have trouble because how do you identify when you want to know someone deeply romantically? What does that mean to you?
Well, in the like relationship anarchy sense of it not being like super like separate between like friends, and lovers.
Or it could be opposite.
It's more like, am I really turned on by this person's brain? Or like,
Mm.
do I want to like spend hours like hearing you talk about like literally anything? Like that is a much more rare experience to me, than like, would I like to put my face on your face? It's like, yeah, the answer to the second one is like often yes. The answer to the first one is very rarely yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Interesting.
like if and I have and so I have been historically unwilling to just be like, well, I'll just wait until I want to like hear somebody talk about literally anything for hours and also want to put my face on their face. Like that sounds lonely, and I don't want to wait that long. And I really like, putting my face on people's faces. So I'm going to keep
Yeah.
finding ways to talk about that in ways that make me feel good.
Totally. And even if I don't want to hear about like anything from a certain mouth words wise, like there are lots of other things that I may otherwise not have been exposed to that is interesting. It's
Yes.
just a different depth of
Yeah,
connection.
exactly. Me like poly, is a way to destabilize the kind of the internalized narrative that I think I was really still carrying in my 20s of like one person has to tick all these boxes.
Absolutely.
And it's like maybe even wrong, right? Like maybe even it's something I should be ashamed of, to want to especially like be sexual with somebody if they don't also tick all the other boxes.
Yeah. 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 So it sounds like you were exposed to like queerness and non monogamous structures early on, but you started to claim them for yourself, what, around 30
Much
ish?
later.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
30-ish,
what
like
yeah. Is there anything in the 20s and the formative experiences that we need to know in terms of just like and was the shame and the sex positive, was it more like a dual experience? Was it like a rubber band snapping back and forth? Was it some combination? Like did it does it
No, I think they both existed together. Like I,
okay.
I think that the shame was sort of like always there with me. Like
Mm,
behaviorally, yeah, I was like, "What are you into? That's great. That's fine." I became very, very like a very, very safe person for other people who had shame because of my foundation. I just wasn't adding to it. I was like, "Cool, yeah, great. You want to like I don't want to be peed on, but that's fine if you like that." Because I'd had this early foundation where I was like, whoa, everything, like I've never even had sex before, and I've got a partner, who just like likes all sorts of like wild, crazy things. And so my initial sexual experience was like, okay, like what do you like? Oh, okay, like I don't think I want to do that one or that one, but that's what you like, and that's fine. And so I was like very good with other people's shame,
okay.
but I was not really good at identifying or working with my own shame at the time.
That makes
And that's
sense.
what I mean about like just being a hot mess.
Yeah.
Because I was inconsistent,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
then confusing to myself and to other people. And then what happened was like I had a very traumatic breakup in my early 30s, and a very traumatic breakup with somebody who was like deeply life committed to that involved infidelity.
Mm,
And I didn't see it coming. I was like never jealous. It never even occurred to me that this would happen. And I was completely shattered by it in a way that wasn't just about betrayal of trust. It was like I broke along some shame lines that were like in me. And so when I was putting myself back together, it like forced me to look at some of that shame. And in the process, I was like, there is a version of me that can hear that my partner is having sex with somebody else and say, wow, that is really painful. That's an incredible breach of trust. Everything stops while we figure this out, but doesn't go, what does this mean about me? I am worthless, and implode. Right. So it's like I want to, how do I get to the first guy? How do I
mm,
get to the guy who's like trust, agreements, pain, betrayal, and not the one who's like, I am, like my self-worth is annihilated. And so that sent me onto like I had a few women, thankfully, in my circle who were poly. Like, and they weren't like asshole dudes. They were poly and they talked about like the challenges of that. And they were like doing their best to love dudes who were often poly assholes. But like I just had a couple of friend acquaintances. That's a word from you, by the way,
mm.
which I use all the time, and my son casually uses it in conversation, and
It's
it
so
very it
useful.
pleases me. Yeah, it's so useful. It's like, oh yeah, great, yeah. This is, it's not like distant. It's not like it's like these are people who I could call up for tea and be like, hey, like I know we don't hang often, but like I need your wisdom. Like, would you
Yeah.
be willing to talk to me about the way that you do things with your relationship and with your heart and your body? Because it was like I needed to know that it was possible to have that painful experience again and not die. And I was like, who knows about that? That it's the people who are doing it on purpose over
Mm,
and over and over again. Right? The
mhm.
people who are purposefully in a relationship strategy where they are inviting their partner to go have sex with other people, or that like it's normal for them. This was the like at the time the idea I had, that for them, their partner to come home and be like, I had sex with somebody new and now we have to talk about it. And so it's like, who knows how to navigate that conversation? Somebody who's having it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so I sought out some poly people and I like had long conversations with them, and I read The Ethical Slut, and I like sort of started reading about it. But again, I've like unpacking shame really takes time. Like I was still like, I mean, I am still carrying it. Like it still lives in me and can be like, like unpredictably triggered. So at the time I was like, it was even more present and was even less aware of it. And so that meant that I didn't identify myself as poly. Like
Mm.
right. So I was trying to poly date without claiming the label, because of my own and people's associations with what the label meant.
Yeah.
And I still hate being put in a box. I still hate labels, but it's really confusing. It meant that I was very confusing to people at the time because they didn't understand what was happening because I wasn't being clear. And so now I can say I'm poly, I am non-hierarchical poly. I have my own problems with those labels, like I can tell you all of my feelings about it, but at least it's something,
Yeah.
to be like, no, what I mean when I say poly is I want multiple close connected relationships that may or may not involve sex, that I negotiate explicitly with those other people. And that is the kind of like poly that I am currently practicing and interested in continuing to practice.
Yeah.
And this is a digression, but like before this podcast started, you were like, tell me about solo poly, and like, am I like, what does it mean? So my feelings about all these labels is that everybody wants to talk about the labels. Oh my god! But okay, so like my feelings about the labels are that like monogamy is really clear. Like monogamy is a road,
Except
right? Like,
it's not. It's just that people assume about husbands and wife. They assume that those words mean certain things, and they
yeah,
don't.
but your assumption is much more likely to be right in monogamy.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Like,
no, I think the whole thing is like, do you have a greater than likelihood of being accurate? If you're like looking at the road of monogamy and making assumptions, yeah, probably.
maybe. But I will also just say, look at divorce rates. And if monogamous people talked about what does being a husband and what does being wife, what does being wives
Well,
together,
yes.
like, what
No,
is it?
I'm a hundred
Like,
percent with you.
if,
I'm just
like,
saying, like, in terms of like me understanding people's attachment to the labels, it's like monogamy, is like you're in the open. It's a road. It's got a like there's you can see the road extend into the distance. It goes up in a certain like specific set of trajectories. Like there's visibility, and there's like a part of the problem is
that's
that
your
they
assumption about it.
well, they like the part of the problem is the felt sense that like of like this is what's clear, and
Yeah.
we don't have to talk about it. Like I think that's the big
Yes,
problem with monogamy
it
is people's
is.
impression that it is a straight line and there's a road, but
Yeah.
certainly that still exists culturally. And so as soon as you step off the road, you are in the wilderness. You are making it up as you go, and people always want to say like, okay, well, but can you describe the wilderness? And it's like, well, yeah, this, you can say this is a forest, but like every forest is a little different, right? Like roads are very similar whether you're in Spain or here.
I
Like there's
totally
somewhere.
disagree. Like, I'm like, nope. I'm like, nope, it's all 100% confusing unless you use 1.5 million words to talk about all of it every
Yeah,
day.
unless you use 1.5 million words, exactly. And
Yeah.
but so like, and that's I agree with you that that's like literally how all relationships are. But I think that once you step off the road of monogamy, like you're in the wilderness. And people love being an expert, so they love saying, well, this kind of wilderness is called this, and this kind of wilderness is called that, and this kind of wilderness doesn't belong over there, and that kind doesn't belong over here. But I think that like in actual practice, like it is useful, to have some top level labels because it helps people not need to ask a million questions at the outset, or it helps to like direct their questions, in a certain way. So I have come to say like, I'm poly. I've been poly for a long time. Right now, I'm solo poly. I'm non-hierarchical poly and kitchen table poly. But I think that if you're in the wilderness with people who are doing any sort of non-traditional relationship, but also if you're in a traditional relationship,
Yeah.
Your response to any of that should be cool, man. What does that mean to
To
you
you. Yeah, for
specifically?
everything.
Like
Yeah.
what is behaviorally? What does that look like? Because otherwise, you still don't really know anything. And it's
Yeah.
like, and it's true in monogamy,
I
but
was gonna say that's
way
still
more
nope, I
it's
don't think it's
way
in
more true in poly. Like it's
I
way
think they're
more
both so
true
true. I think all of it's very true.
in non-traditional relationships because it's like because you can have a situation where like the label, like poly, means something radically different, to one person than to another. And I think that that's just like because people are in the Wild West, they're inventing it on their own,
Yeah.
and they get very attached to like, no, it definitely means this. There's more potential for miscommunication in non-traditional relationships if you don't ask a bunch of follow-up questions about like, okay, what are your actual practices and what does that mean to you?
I think that's a fair point. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to compare them. I don't think there are scientific studies that could help actually
No,
measure
no,
that.
no,
But
no,
I
no.
can
This is
tell
my
you,
opinion.
but I can tell you that there are lots of married people that pretend to be on the same
Oh
page
yeah,
and
yeah.
aren't because they never had these questions because they're operating on assumptions, you know? And even if they come from the same background, those assumptions oftentimes, I mean, I've been in enough circumstances where I see one or both parties are like pretty unhappy with their mutual assumptions that could be different if they just talked about them.
I also think that there are a lot of like married monogamous people who are actually doing something that I think of as like,
Yes.
sort of poly or poly adjacent,
Yeah.
and like doing that quite happily, but but they are like, no, no, we're monogamous.
That's what
We
I'm
just,
saying.
he just has a lover in Connecticut and that's fine. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, cool. That's, huh.
No, no, our road just happens to be unpaved and undefined and changes a lot. And it is in a forest. It's also in an ocean and a lake and I mean, it's like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is
it's,
definitely a
we're
road because we
monogamous.
say it
Yeah, it's
is.
like,
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
like all the straight people are like totally straight. Definitely don't mind playing with the same gender, do get aroused by it. You know, body parts don't
Yeah,
matter. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, well, whatever labels are helpful.
Because like I was drawn to the like the label of queerness. I've like tried that on for myself, for a number of years. Recently, was I think it was my partner, the one who's been in my life for the last 3 years, who shared a Dan Savage article with me that was basically like ranting about poly people. Like, are you queer really? Like, do you play like are you attracted to people of the same gender? No, then you're not queer. Like you're just straight but interesting. Like, and if you
Straight, but
remove yourself from this category of straightness, you're just like lowering the bar for straightness everywhere. Like, why does straight have to be boring? Like, just keep saying
mm,
you're straight because we want interesting straight people in the world. And I was like, okay, that's really like funny and smart. And also, it's true, I don't feel romantic or sexual attraction to men. Like, I'm fine to have sexual experiences where there are men around, but I'm not like, oh, I really want to put my mouth on that person's bits,
okay.
right? Like, yeah, I mean, I've tried that, and
Okay.
it was like a cool experience, but I don't know, it didn't turn me on.
Okay. So your like body didn't react to it.
No, no,
Okay.
but I was kind of like, will I have a shame explosion? Hey, no, I didn't. That's
Okay.
awesome.
But there was no arousal?
No,
Okay. Well, that's okay too. I'm,
yeah.
yeah.
Like, I mean, we were both playing, with a female partner of mine at the time, and so there was definitely arousal, but not about that.
Okay. Okay. I love that.
In terms of like my own exploration, honestly, like the next step, in exploring would be to like be in that, like in that sort of threesome experience, but with another man who is like, much more like actively like attracted to me.
That's what I was gonna ask about. Yeah. I was like, did you feel desired?
That would be a fun edge, like
Yeah.
because it is possible that if somebody was very, very, very excited about that happening, that might be arousing.
Okay. Because there is a voice in my head that's like, what if you just didn't meet the right guy? Not that I think everyone needs
Right.
to be queer. It's totally fine, but you know.
No, it's like dude, if my body could get excited about that, that would just be more opportunities for pleasure, and I really like more than okay with that. I want that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, and it means like, yeah, it means like paying attention to and undoing some like internalized homophobia from the place I grew up. Like, so it means like coming into being gentle with myself so that I don't find myself having a shame explosion in the middle of what should be like an erotic connective experience. And I don't want to like point a shame explosion at somebody by accident.
I mean, most people don't want to do that, especially by accident or on purpose.
Right.
So I remember evolutions of your kinky self, but I didn't know that you were exposed to kink so young. So how did it bubble through for you? Like, and tell us about and maybe it layers in with poly stuff. And I don't know, did you talk about relationship anarchy enough? Because that's like my formative idea of you from when we were meeting. Like, you were really
Yeah, yeah,
interested
yeah.
in that phrase, but like,
Very interested in relationship anarchy because relationship anarchy is the like is the this literally means nothing, so you're going to have to ask me, of the labels. And so it's like, of
yeah.
course I like the label that's like, this is the label that means you have to ask me a million questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I like it too because I identify with certain aspects depending on which definition of relationship anarchy you like
Yes,
go with.
exactly.
But I love the idea that I can have intimate relationships with or without sex and I decide where those are. You know, like my best friend Gigi, sometimes I call her my wife, and that's like we're not married. And also sometimes we go a while without actually like talking and then we drop in very deeply and like we have deep intimacy, and sometimes it is sexual, but like sex is not how we connect. Like talking is how we connect. Adventures
Yeah,
is how we connect. Work is how we
yeah.
connect. You know, so that's what appeals about it to me. But like, when did it start appealing to you? And how and when does kink layer into your relational unfoldings?
I don't remember like when relationship anarchy as an idea sort of entered my circle. Probably was around the time where we met because I was engaging a lot in the blues fusion scene in Vancouver at the time, and one of the drafters of the original what is it, the relationship smorgasbord. That is, it's sort of like a tool that is available for relationship anarchy folks. Yeah, have you seen this?
No, I'm just thinking I gotta go look at it.
Yeah, yeah, it's easy to find, online. I'm trying to remember like exactly what it's called. One of the drafters of that happened to be somebody who was like in the same blues fusion scene that I was in. And so probably it was like, talking to her.
Cool.
Here it is. Called the Relationship Anarchy Smorgasbord,
Okay.
created by Lyrica Lawrence and Heather Orr, yada yada yada. And then there's a newer one, called Relational Ecology Mapping, but it was the original Relationship Anarchy Smorgasbord that probably like was my exposure at the time. And it's basically just like a list of like, here are all the things that you could do with another person you were intimate with. Like talk with your person and decide which ones you want to do. Like, do you want to share finances or not share finances? Do you want to do things in public or not do things in public? Do you want to touch each other's bits or not touch each other's bits? Do you want to the like look after your kids or not look after your kids? And I was like, oh, that's really like an alive, interesting idea. It was on the side of my fridge for a long time. And
Mm.
there were like some like sort of poly weirdos, in that community that I really liked and had good chats with. I think that my kink explorations in like an explicit way, where I was like thinking of them as kink, really paralleled yours.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of conversations when I was just discovering
Yeah,
it, and
yeah, when you were just
yeah.
discovering it, exactly. And I don't remember if I had like if I had a real active interest in it like previous to that, or if it was your early explorations, that got me really into it, or if it's like we were talking about it together, and then you were like suddenly like deep into exploring it in practice, and I was like, whoa, what is that? It actually took me like, so I was definitely curious about kink things for a year or two after that. But it wasn't until I found shibari, that I found like a genuine in for myself. I think that understanding power play took having an activity, that was not explicitly sexual, but contained the possibility for sensuality and eroticism, that included like in its power play, in its structure. Like I just needed a way to dabble and be like, oh, I really like that. Like whatever that was, I want more of that. That thing where when I do it, my partner gets all like sort of soft and melty and stupid. Like that was awesome. How do I make that happen more?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love that. Tell us all the things you love about shibari and or power play as it bleeds it. Like just like, tell us about your kinky parts.
Shibari was my in, but honestly, like with partners now, I don't, like I bust out my ropes sometimes, but it's much more like Shibari helped me understand power in myself, and now I want to play with that with my partners in different ways. So I don't have like a deep attachment to like tying a partner up unless that's the thing that turns them on the most. In which case, that's like I'm I don't know, I'm just doing a normal sex thing, which is like what's going to be hottest for my partner. Like I'm going to pick from that menu like the things that are hot for me today, and then do only those things. Like I love that. I love that game. Then I think everybody gets to relax, right? That's why back to that new conversation of like, so what's the pre-conversation? If I can find out like what are the things that are hot for my partner, either experientially or by talking, and then I can just pick from that menu only the things that I like, then yeah, am I like that sort of fits into power play if I'm like leading or guiding or facilitating, but then like I get to do only things I like, and I get to like just relax because I know the things that are happening are the things that my partner likes, and neither of us has to be like, are they just doing it for me? Like it just like takes that off the table in a way that is I find very like calming and reassuring.
Oh, absolutely. Will you please list for us some of the hot, delicious things you've experienced and enjoyed?
I really enjoy tying up a partner, but it's creating that like soft melting experience, for my partner, that is like the hottest thing, and so how we get there is individual for each person. Like or the play partner who I'm having the like, will we stay connected and how ambiguous conversation. The first time we met, like she had just moved here from Iran for school, and I was like, oh my God, tell me everything. Like you were somewhere where having sex is like illegal, and like not only were you having kinky sex, but like any of the sex partners you met could have been a secret service person in disguise waiting to arrest you forever. Like, like talk about high stakes. Like that's
Yeah.
and you still were like a kinky person. Like I must know everything. So I was fascinated. That was at that point I wasn't doing a spreadsheet, but I had like a full page list, and we sort of like met in the context of just of playing together and doing negotiated play. And so we met at a coffee shop. We went through my list, and then I was like, go away, think about it. Like I'm going to run this errand, and like 15 minutes from now, if you're like, yes, I want to play together. Like basically when I'm not here, and so there isn't a context of like you wanting to please me because I'm right here.
Mm.
If you're like, I want to play together, then send me your address. And when she did, I was like, great, tell
Hot.
me three feeling words, for like, how you want to feel, and I don't remember, like she was something and something and scared, and it was like, okay, hot. I've never done that with a new partner before. And so, and so I was like much more forceful with her than I would have been otherwise. Yeah, she wanted, pain, she wanted to be scared. Yeah. And so I went in and like, took her clothes off, and like stood back, and like, examined her, and like, stood behind her in the mirror. And it was extremely hot. And this is a partner who, like, when we first played together, she was like, I don't know if I'm going to orgasm at all.
Mm.
Like, just so you know, it might not happen. And the first time we played together, it was really fun to like make her come repeatedly while she had my cock in her mouth, because like she was sort of overwhelmed by like how unexpected and awesome that was.
Uh-huh.
And like that connection has like built to the point where like now when we have sex, like she comes like the second I put my cock inside her in a way that like I've never experienced with another person. Right. And then I can torture her by giving her repeated orgasms by fucking her.
Ah, fun. I like that
Right.
torture.
And she actually sort of would be, again, this is somebody who likes torture or pain or discomfort in some ways, and so we've gone from like me needing to like physically torture her to like, I basically fuck her until she dissociates, from having too many orgasms.
Whoa. Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
imagine that must feel powerful.
So exactly. Like, of course that feels special to me. So I'm like, cool, man. You don't want to respond to my text for a couple of months, but you do that when I touch you. We're fine. I feel very special in this connection.
Yeah. Wow.
Part of the way we got there was, by like I had a partner who found her really triggering, and I, and so, and then we got back together, and then she was with a partner, and like that kind of didn't work for me, and and then we came back together, and then she didn't have a fresh test, and so like in a way that would have like worked with my other partners. So we like a couple of different times we had play sessions that were really just about her begging me to fuck her, and I was like, I can put my fingers places, but like you can't put your mouth on my bits, and I can't put my bits on your bits, and like, and that was so hot. Like one of those times when we were playing together in a like constrained way because of my agreements with my other partners.
Yeah.
I was like, well, like here I'm naked, but I'm not going to like put my bits on your bits, or like my mouth on your bits, etc. But I was like, you can try. Because I'm way stronger than she is. So I was like, you can try and make me fuck you. And when we got to that point, she like tried, and like just thinking about that like came immediately, like and in a way that was like embarrassing for her. She's like, I can't believe I came just like thinking about having your cock inside me. And I think that really set the stage for like where we are now.
Ooh, okay. Oh my
Right. So
gosh.
it was like, so some extreme edging experiences
Yeah.
that weren't because I was torturing her with edging. It was because like, well, you didn't get your test. So who gets, I guess like some of the things that you want, we just get to tease you with. Yeah, it's right there, but you don't get it. But I would really, I love that. Actually, like one of my favorite experiences, if I'm like playing with somebody new, or somebody I'm just getting to know, and they say, I'm not sure if I want to have sex. Which, for like normal people typically means like, I don't know if I want your cock inside me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
right. So it's like, oh cool. I know what those words mean. So one of my favorite things to do in that situation is to be great. Listen, we're not going to do
Take
that.
it off the table. Yeah.
Like the right, because if you're not sure, like then let's say no.
Yeah.
But would you be willing to collaborate with me on an experience where you beg me to fuck you and I say no?
Yeah.
Because you wanting me to fuck you, that's actually the thing that's hot for me. Like, don't get me wrong, I like really love having my cock inside people, and it's very hot. But I've discovered that having the experience of somebody begging me to fuck them and being like, no, 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 you don't get that. No, I'm not doing that. You're like, oh, yeah, I can see why you would want that, but you're gonna have to wait until next time. Like that,
Mm.
like so hot, so satisfying, like every bit as satisfying as like actually having sex, and sometimes more,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah. Well, especially with the buildup. That's the thing. It's like I love to fuck. I love having a cock inside of me. I love fingers inside of me. I want to put my mouth on a pussy. I want to put my fingers in a pussy. Like all of it. I want to be everywhere. And I know now because I've had the benefit of having other partners that have slowed me down, and now I also know how to be the partner, given the circumstances, to slow down and draw things out. How much more delicious everything gets when there is an ingredient of can't or patience or, can't yet or earn it or whatever. Like,
Yeah, and it's a great way to destabilize any felt sense of obligation, which again, like as a male-bodied person in a patriarchal world, helping my partners destabilize, the in any internalized sense of obligation to offer sex, is
mm,
important. Right.
yeah.
And I think that like that being aware of that and destabilizing it on purpose makes the way for like fully juicy consensual hotness.
Totally. And as a feminine who often is having sex with masculines who have been kind of trained to believe that, like, they must erotically perform. And for a lot of people, it looks like, I will touch you, and then I will squeeze your nipples, and then I will kiss them, and I will kiss your neck, and then I will touch your pussy, and then I will lick your pussy, and then I will hope that you go down on me, and then we will fuck, and then it's, like anything that gets rid of those, like, steps and that performance
Yes.
aspect of it, because I can feel it. I can feel it when people disappear. And so that's when I shift tempo or pull back or whatever, per our agreement, depending if someone is like, no, I really just want to like fuck today, then we might do that depending on the agreement. But like,
Yes.
I really love anything that requires a co-created experience, requires the other
Yeah.
person's personal creative bits to come out, not just their original creative bits like their genitals, but the like creativity within their heart, mind, soul, spirit, etc. That's super hot.
Right now my constellation is this play partner who like maybe will continue in a new way. I have a lover who just recently moved to my community, and so I get to see with more ease, which is nice. and then I have a like a partner who lives long distance, who I'm just like deeply love connected to, and have been seeing for 3 years. This is the most stable, nourishing poly relationship that I've had ever. Like she's been with her nesting partner for 17 years. She's like very, very, very secure. In a way that's really positive. So with my lover here, we do like daddy little girl play in a way that is just like absolutely reliably turns me on. Like
Mm.
just it's totally non-rational. Like it does it just like bypasses my brain. If I'm fucking her and she just is saying daddy, daddy, daddy over and over again, I'm just like, yep, wow, okay, totally does it for me.
I fucking
Yeah, it's
love that.
great. It's great. It's great. And then my longer term partner, she doesn't identify as kinky. She's like, I'm not kinky. I just can be turned on by literally anything that turns on my partner. That's all. So we've done like so much kinky stuff, and I'm like, no, you're. I think you're kinky. You're very kinky. And she's like, oh yeah, I guess.
Wait, like what? Like what have you done?
I don't know. Like we've done all sorts of things. Like she's very into sensation. She's very into like put me where you want me and show me what you want me to do. Like things that I would think of as power play. But like she loves being tied up. She loves being like spanked until she cries and then fucked about it. Like the right, like right, and so I don't know. It was visiting her. She lives in a rural community, that's fairly remote, and so I was visiting her. We set up the massage table upstairs and like lit candles and things, and then I went outside and found some like long like new shoots on some kind of like very switchy plant, and like sat on the front porch and like used a knife and like shaved off all of the like nubbles and like leaves, and then brought them inside, and then like so we started with like massage and sensuality, and then I like just like beat the hell out of her with these like switchy things, like slowly ramping up. I like her feet are extraordinarily sensitive, so I lashed her feet, and she was like
That's mean.
so intense. I like I gave I lashed her with these things, like not immediately, but like until they had just disintegrated, like they were pre bits, and so they did not survive the lashings. I lashed them apart, and dumped hot wax on her, and then there were and then there was also like various kinds of sex that happened. Yeah, that's a totally normal thing.
Very
you know
vanilla.
yeah, and it's just like she doesn't think of that as kinky. She's like, well, I just like everything, and whatever my partner likes is fine because romance.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. So it's like more of a responsive desire, an openness to sensation and activity, but for her, the frame is anything kinky to her? Like, is that kinky if it's on other people, or just
I
not for
like
her?
no, I think it's like for her, it's an intellectual thing.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
she's coming to understand what people mean when they say kinky, but I
I
don't
get
think
it.
she like she like natively thinks of anything as kinky.
I'm still trying to figure out taboo. Like in that same vein. I
But
get
she
it.
actually is the same way about romance. Like I continue to reflect back to her that I experience her as very romantic, and she's like, "Am I?"
That's what's happening to me too. Yeah, that's why I
I'm
got
like,
really
"You
curious.
went out of your way to do this sweet, thoughtful thing that was like loving and yeah, like yes, romantic." She's like, "Huh? I guess I am." Like,
I think to me, like being romantic has this connotation of like, I'm gonna get something out of this. And I think that is not correct. Like, I think the more that I research romance, it's like, no, it's just because of love or romance. Like, it's for the
yeah,
romanticness
yeah,
of
yeah.
it.
So probably it's just like so you could have been like being consistently romantic for a very long time and just be like, huh, that? Oh yeah, okay, I get that's sure.
I'm like, you mean being nice to someone I care about and thoughtful?
Yeah, exactly. I'm doing the romance. Great, thank you.
I'm
I'll
doing,
take the points. Just
okay.
to like take the easy win.
No, but I have so much anxiety that, especially encountering you know, partners that are more romantic than I've ever experienced. And I'm like, even I can tell these words that come out of the mouth pointed at me that sound like poetry that you've been writing, just how your brain works about me. Okay. Like even I can identify. And so, and then I'm like, fuck, I got to be romantic enough. What does it mean? And so, because I
Oh
really,
no, it's like one more thing that you need to accomplish. Yeah,
well, no, I
that
mean,
sounds
like,
kind of terrible.
I really thought, I was like, okay, romance is going to be a theme of February of last year. And then I was like, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still thinking about it. And then like by the end of this past year, I was like, I'm done thinking about like, I'll let it rest. But it just comes up. It just comes up so
Yeah.
often, and I'm like, but what do you really mean?
Your deep fascination for like 8 years before that was sex. Like it's, you're
That
just
hasn't
you like
stopped.
brought.
I just
I
realized
know
that
you're
they're
just
related.
you're broadening the circle. You're like, what? Okay, cool. Like, what are these things that humans talk
Hmm.
about?
Speaking of things humans talk about, what does it feel like to be daddy? Like, what is it about daddy that gives you that zine?
Like, and this is what I mean. Like, it's not rational. It's not something that like, I think about. If you'd asked me if I would like it before I had like the first partner who wanted to call me daddy, I would have been like, I don't know. But like, wow, super reliable. I think it's that it like feels genuinely transgressive. So part of it is that it feels genuinely transgressive. That it's like that there's some level of like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this, but we both want to, and so it's not just allowed, but it's hot, and that like, and so I think that like it's a way to leverage some of the power that shame has in my life for good.
Mm,
Where it's like I think that if I didn't have any shame about transgression, or especially like any baseline shame, then it wouldn't be particularly hot. It would just be interesting, right? But the for it to have this power, like that power's got to come from somewhere. Like, and I think that it is like alchemized from the shame experience.
oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's my thinking about it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of kink is like that. But like a lot of kink, is people being like, there's something in my inner experience, that is problematic, or hurtful or traumatic or but charged,
Mm,
and I either want to like retrain my system or I'm just following charge and I'm like, I don't know why. I
mm,
don't know why, but
hmm hmm
thing, wow, really does it for me. I'm just following like where the charge lives.
I love that. And I'm learning that one of my favorite things is to ask people to put impossible emotional and physical experiences into words. So thank you for continuing to attempt to do that with me.
Yeah, I
And
love that. I love
I can't help but compare myself to your partner of 3 years and be like, I do identify with a lot of that. However, in my early experience, I had a partner that was like, "So this is kinky, and so if you like this, then you're kinky with me now." And I was like, "Okay, so I'm kinky." Like I just like applied the label to
yes.
myself because
Yes.
I think also in the world so many labels. I'm like, "Oh, I'm supposed to wear this label? Okay, okay, I'll put it on here so they know that I'm like this." Okay. Am I doing it? And so,
Yes.
and here I am still trying to like crack the code of taboo and romance, even though I kind of get it. Like I kind of get it, I kind of don't get it. Sometimes I think romance is taboo, but not how people are using those words broadly. But I'm like,
Well, I think that you and I both have a pretty high tolerance, for ambiguity. That like arriving at a definitive answer, seems more like a marketing strategy,
oh
than
yeah.
like a deep understanding.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I am so interested in hearing people's specific answers, and it's
Yes.
only so that I can be like, well, everything is exactly everything is
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. Okay, so everything, like literally everything can be kinky if you think about it. Oh, okay. Huh. It's-
Yeah, yeah. And so it's like I like to get a definitive answer for the moment. I mean, that's why it's noodling. That's why it's noodles.
Also, I think that if like playing into an existing power dynamic is a lot easier than creating one from scratch, and so like this lover, like I am older than she is.
Mm.
And she has like shame around, like needing or wanting care, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
for her, like sexualizing care, and leaning into an existing power dynamic where I am older than she is, like both of those things are really working for both of us.
Mm. I love that. I mean, and yeah, getting to receive nurturing care especially connected to a erotic turn on, is for me one of the
Yeah.
hottest things. Like, you know, and
Yeah.
being nurtured in a number of ways, like through touch, through listening, through deep attention. For me, food is like a big,
Yeah.
not like food in the bedroom. I haven't explored feeding yet, but yeah.
Well, if somebody is like struggling to receive, like then yeah, of course, like therapy and journaling and figuring it out. But sometimes you can just be like, cool, can we like use the charge of that
Yeah.
struggle and make it hot?
Yeah.
Whether that's like, okay, now you're going to be forced to receive the thing that like you
Yes.
deeply crave and want, or like we're going to make you beg for the thing that you would otherwise like have so much trouble asking for, or like, right, yeah, there are like the ways to play with that are really hot, I think. And I don't know, I tied up somebody last year, I think. We were having our like pre-conversation for tying up, and I was like, oh, like just so you know, like I might like something that might come out of my mouth. How do you feel about that? Like it might, tell you that you're a good girl, just because like that's a thing that I sometimes say. She was like a dog? She was just like not only was it like neutral for her, but like she was also like sort of like
Like, where
confused.
do I
Like
put
what?
context? Yeah.
Like why would you do that? Like and I was like, oh wow, I haven't had that reaction in quite a while. Okay, noted. No, that's going into the no category for this person. I want something that's hot for me to be experienced as like, what are you doing over there?
And also, what a good example of thank goodness you brought it up instead of making the assumption. Because I have had a lot of people throw out a lot of words at me, you know, in the heat of the moment that are totally their own assumptions about what is hot or not, you know, without checking
Yeah,
in. So
yeah, 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 yeah.
good on
Well,
you.
thankfully with you there, like you have a very like robust profile of things you think are hot. So
Yes, and context is everything for me, right? So it's like when I've even had messages or sext panthers from listeners who are like, "Hey," and they dive into like the most degrading, nasty stuff for the first hello, and I'm like, okay, but if you've been listening, then like, you know, then you know that like context agreements, you know, talking about how do I want to play, even if it's just words, like just because I think
mhm.
something is hot with one person who I've established a relationship with, doesn't mean that I want to be like a cum dumpster to someone who I'm shaking hands with. Like,
Oh my God. Oh my God, when you put it like that, it's horrifying. Yeah. Sorry. I was thinking of the context of like having sex with somebody who you actually liked and already were having sex with, but
and that we've
yes.
had a conversation about, you know, about stuff with,
Yes.
you know, and I am in contexts where people may be having sex with me with only a certain amount of knowledge, and I do a very good job of being like, here's what's on the table today, because we've, you know, explicitly negotiated it, and that is
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what I really love. Okay, obviously I could talk to you for many hours, but is there anything else from your like sex life, sexy yums, like things that we just haven't hit on that we feel like we need to share to just like have a complete picture of your this current snapshot of your sexual self?
Sometimes I will refer to myself as solo poly only because I'm not actively pursuing being nested right now. But like for some people, it sounds like it's like for them, it's a felt sense of identity. It's like a deep life commitment where they're like, I am solo poly, meaning I never want that, and I know that now, and I'm going to lead with that. Like sort of
Okay.
a way of. It sounds like some people use it as a way of filtering, where they're like, look, if
Mm-hmm.
you want a nester, I'm not that,
Mm-hmm.
so move on. Or like, I'm going to put out there, and so that's certainly not the way I use it.
Okay.
It's Soul poly is more just a description of the way I've been doing poly for the last 15 years, which is
Yeah.
like I haven't been nested with a partner for the last 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I use it too.
Not attached to what happens in the next 15.
Yeah, I did, and I didn't realize that it could be a projection on accident for me of like I'm alone in my apartment and I've got this, okay? You know, although the reality of my life is I am grown up being
You are, yeah,
solo, like I
exactly.
really am,
Right.
like I
You're
really
not
am,
attached to staying that way forever.
you
Exactly.
know,
You're
and I could see room for falling into it. I could see room for like landing into or co-creating some sort of nest if it made sense, you know. And also I
yes.
know that I'm a really specific flavor and a lot
Amen. I
of
feel you
nests
there.
are not my shape. So
Uh-huh.
I'm like, could someone
Uh-huh.
please build a funny nest with me? It's gotta be big.
At the moment, like I live with a close friend, somebody who I like really, really enjoy. and so I get some of the benefits of nesting, without some of the like monogamous baggage that people carry around nesting, which seems
Yeah.
to be like, this is the person that it's okay if I don't communicate with and vaguely resent, while also like needing and requiring. It's, I don't know. That's me projecting onto stories that monogamous people tell when they complain.
Yeah.
But like I don't want that.
You don't want mutual resentment loops? Like on the foundation of
No.
dishonesty or just
Yeah, no,
non-disclosure?
mutual resentment loops, they that also involve like sort of hiding or obscuring, intent, parts of one's inner experience because that's the implicit rule of your relationship. No.
Yeah. Yeah, no thanks.
Right. And like there's monogamous people out there doing it great. Like, hey, like no disrespect to the monogamous folks who are like, having the open conversations and being awesome.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I think any type of consciously co-created relationship that is meeting the needs of the parties involved is great. I think if it's meeting the needs of the
Yeah,
parties
man.
involved, great. If not, like I
Yes.
hope for something better for all parties involved because I want people
Yeah.
to feel fulfilled. And I mean, my real goal in life is just to have people have good sex. So, you have a relationship.
I have a close friend in my community who's somebody who I dated very briefly 7 years ago, who I think is so hot. Like this person is just smoking hot, and she has a very sensitive nervous system and carries a lot of trauma, and is just like, and is crystal clear that poly is not for her.
Mm,
And it's been really wonderful to like, build and nurture and maintain that friendship and to be like, oh, I think that we're actually like still attracted to each other, except that this person is like very clear that the way that I do relationship, is something they absolutely don't want.
yeah.
And so cool, I can hang with that.
Yeah.
We can just like love each other and be friends.
Ugh, let's just love each other and be friends and see how it goes. I
Yeah,
love that. I mean, we do. We do.
yeah, 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 exactly.
Okay, so tell us your hopes for the future. This can be sexual. It doesn't have to be sexual, but like relationally, connection wise, sex wise, like what are you hoping to experience, continue, and or explore?
But I think I would like to get progressively better at navigating my own shame and communicating, openly and clearly. I'd like to build like sustained, hot, loving connections in my life. I have one like really like robust, sustained, hot, loving connection in my life. I'm like, oh, okay. I want to build on this current feeling of success and have more. Yes, thank you, more, please.
Thank you more, please.
And then just like sexually, there are, yeah, like there, maybe some things, that I'm like curious to explore, but there's nothing that's on my list that I'm like, oh, this thing that I have not yet experienced.
Yeah.
Right. There's just like, oh, like what haven't I done? What don't I know? And some of that is like sex with new people. Some of that is like sex in new ways. Like I said, it would be an edge for me, playing with like a man who was really attracted to me. A couple of years ago, I had a partner who was like really like relentlessly, greedily enthusiastic about group sex, and so we like made a bunch of threesomes with like everybody who wanted to, because she always wanted to, and that was hot. Like the having a partner who's really into that, is something that like I really enjoyed that. I would love to have a partner who's really into that again.
I really love the phrase, we made a bunch of threesomes. I think that's
Yeah.
one of my favorite things that's come out of your mouth. I love that. I really love that. What about when I come visit you? That's not on your bucket list?
That's not a bucket list. That's just something that's going to be really nice.
Just an
Yeah.
inevitability. Okay, okay, okay,
Yeah,
fair.
exactly. Well, the word, it's a desire, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, what else is on your design? I mean, I'm so opportunistic. I do have a big long bucket list and I am curious to explore all those things. And what I always tell people is the caveat is not like I want you to pick a thing to do it just so I cross it off. I want the other person to be like super duper into it so I can experience this thing with
Oh,
someone
I've been
who's
saying
super
this to
duper into it.
my new lover here, because the is like I want to. I don't want to willing to. Like in the context of like
Yeah.
an ongoing connection, like there are places where like a willing to can be hot, but like top level, like if I'm building something or starting something new, like I want to start with the things we both want to.
Yeah.
It's like and because that's what's hot for me. Like what's actually hot for me is like to at least have the belief that my partner really desires the experience that we're both having.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why like making sure that in the conversation and like trying to find reassurance for myself, like is this thing that we're planning on doing something that is actually wanted? It's like something that really helps me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the number one thing that shows up for you.
That's the number one reason that I want to have multiple partners is because I do, like, just in general, I'm pretty curious about a lot of stuff in an intense way. And it's a different energy. Like, unless I find a clone of me, which I haven't yet, I found a lot of horny
for,
people.
not for lack of trying.
Not for lack of trying. I'm just looking for myself. Unless I meet someone who really is like as curious, but even more organized to follow through on making things happen. Because part of what I want is catalyst energy. I am a catalyst for so many people. And so I'm looking for my own catalysts because I don't always want to be, especially in sex, responsible for creating all of that energy. Although there are some contexts where that is extremely satisfying to me, I want more and different. And so I'm most interested in experiencing different energies with people who are like, oh, I fucking love this thing. That was what I enjoyed so much about my first kink
I
experience.
love
It was
you.
deeply gratifying because I had a partner who held space for me, and now I get to hold space for other people in, a similar but different way. And so it's like, and then I'm like, yeah, I don't want to just go like experience latex with someone who's like, oh yeah, we could try latex. I want to find the latex nerd that I was on set with 6 years ago and be like, hey, do you actually want to do that thing that you offered me? And like, can you, and show me the whole thing? And then I could facilitate somebody else's growth and exploration. Like,
Mm-hmm.
those are the ripples of love that I'm curious about. So,
Mm-hmm. Totally.
okay, well, I'll have to, when I finish organizing the current form of my bucket list, maybe I'll share it with you and we'll see what
Oh
overlap
yeah, please
happens
do.
when I get up there. Wrapping up, if you suddenly had an unlimited budget to build your own personal pleasure palace or be in charge of a wing of mine, what elements would you include and who would you invite?
Yesterday in the Emily Nagoski book, that I'm listening to right now, she was like, I once was in a house that in the center of the living space had the pool and a giant garden, and then like all of the in this big open concept space. And I was like, wow, that sounds luxurious. So if I'm building a pleasure palace, yeah, I want that.
That.
I want like yes, please, like leave it very, very open, and have the whole thing be like humid and full of plants, and have there be like a dry sauna off on one side as well. Mhm.
Oh, yeah, with comfortable places to play everywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
Comfortable,
yeah, yeah.
easy to clean places to play
Yeah, yeah,
everywhere.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, that's the advantage of the minimalism, right? Like we've
Yes.
got the garden to look after,
Yeah.
but aside from that, like this, so lots of tile.
Yeah. 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 But not too
It's all by the
slippery.
pool.
Not too slippery if
No,
wet.
no,
Just the
no, no,
right kind.
no. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I love that. Okay. For the good of humanity, what do you think we collectively need to co create a world where taking care of each other is the norm? How do we create a sexier, more loving world together?
I'm really on the page of the understanding shame and vulnerability, is the pathway there.
Yeah.
That the barrier to a lot of the kind of noticing what's going on, I think is, cultural shame, internalized shame, family shame, and figuring out like what helps notice those things, what helps move through those things, like what helps, folks be vulnerable and find that, in themselves with each other, that's the kind of thing that sort of moves us all sort of socially and interpersonally into a world I'm more interested in.
And how do you like to spread ripples of love?
I think, by trying to be open about my own experience and inviting other people to do that.
Hmm. You totally do. You totally do. And deeply, you're such a deep listener. You're such a thoughtful, deep listener.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely woo humans, that is our show. Remember to follow your hearts and follow your parts and follow me in family-friendly internet places at Lunar Woohoo, or if you're in naughty internet places, at Lunar Secrets. Visit howtowoo.fyi for links to everything. You can support our awesome show on Patreon for early ad-free episodes. You can worship me virtually on OnlyFans or Sextpanther, or we can work together in person in a number of excellent creative capacities. You can also ask a question, share a story, or apply to be a guest at howtowoo.fyi if you want to be on the show. And tell a friend to help us grow. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and let me know how you're spreading ripples of love.